Chapter 261. Before the arrival of winter, the 10 teams sent out to pick up the wanderers had all returned to the ferocious Beast Mountain forest. At this time, the number of people in the Flaming Horns tribe had reached 8 or 9,000. Including the wanderers from other tribes who had followed them, there were about 10,000 people in the Flaming Horns tribe around the old haunt. Including the wanderers from other tribes, there were about 10,000 people in the Flaming Horns tribe. No one had expected that there would be so many people. With so many people, it would be lively. Many houses had been built in the tribe. Basically, they were all wooden houses. Wooden houses were simple and built quickly. Now, they were just building a place for everyone to sleep and rest. As for what kind of house they wanted to build in the future, it depended on their own wishes. The totem warriors, in addition to guarding the surroundings, had to take turns to hunt for food. Now, no matter whether it was ferocious beasts or wild beasts, there were many people in the tribe. Other wanderers who came to the tribe, whether they were from the tribe or from other tribes, were trying their best to prove their value. Building houses, cutting trees, processing food, and so on, they would take the initiative to participate. This was an opportunity to make a good impression. Naturally, technical talents would not be let go. Those who knew how to build ships and carts, those who made porcelain, and those who knew about herbs were all called to help. Therefore, in the tribe, it was common to see some wanderers pushing one-wheeled or two-wheeled wooden carts to transport things. Back then, the few old men who had a special fondness for pottery, such as Xing and the others, gathered people who knew how to make pottery. Every day, they would research which soil was suitable for making pottery, which recipe was the best, and what kind of pottery to make. When Xiao Xian returned to the tribe, many people in the tribe had already started using pottery. It was much more convenient than stone tools, but some people were not used to it. For example, Xueqi and the others broke one a day, which made Xing angry. Xiao Xian went to see the pottery kiln. The ancestors of the Yanjiao tribe had also left records about pottery. But after 1,000 years, pottery firing had improved a lot. There was a lot of clay in the ferocious Beast Mountain forest that was suitable for making pottery. This made Xing and the others so happy that they were all smiles. They would stand guard there every day, each of them holding a piece of beast skin in their hands to record something. Many times they would even do it themselves. Xiao Xian had also burned a few household items. At the same time, he also tried to burn some pottery tiles and green bricks. Xiao Xian used the pottery tiles and bricks to build the house. The original wooden house had been converted into a brick and tiled house. It was even bigger than the house he had built on the other side of the river. Next to the house, there was also a wolf den built for Caesar. As for Cha-Cha, it would not stay here to rest. Instead, it would run to a nearby mountain to build its nest. Xiao Xian went over to take a look. It was still on a high cliff. There was a sunken area that Cha-Cha had dug into the ground to make a cave, and he lived there. When the teams came back, the livestock and seeds they brought back were also taken care of by those who knew the ropes. There were indeed many skilled people among the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe who came from all over the world. It was much better to leave the work to them than to let the totem warriors of the tribe do it blindly. Old He and other people from the grassland were responsible for raising livestock and building animal pens. When Xiao Xian went to take a look, the few wilted cows and sheep were now very strong. Although sometimes they were frightened by the roars of the beasts in the forest, they were still braver than the animals raised by the Lu tribe. After a long time they had adapted. Xiao Xian was called out by Tuo early in the morning. He was not patrolling today. He had to go hunting later, so he only had time now. "How is it? I built it myself," Tuo said proudly, pointing at the house he had just built. He had planned to build a stone house with stones. After all, when he was on the other side of the river, his family also lived in a stone house. However, after seeing Xiao Xian's house made of blue bricks and tiles, Tuo changed his mind. He went to Xing's place and asked them to make a batch of blue bricks and tiles. Then he brought back the house he built. After he finished, he couldn't wait to ask Xiao Xian to come and take a look. "It's very good." Xiao Xian looked at Tuo's house and said. Now Xiao Xian's house was not far from Tuo's house. The distribution of houses in the tribe was similar to that on the other side of the river. The higher the status, the closer it was to the fire pit. Even though it was not a whole mountain, it was still arranged according to this rule. Xiao Xian's family did not have other people with high status. However, everyone knew his contribution to the tribe, so they had no objection to the arrangement. "Why haven't I seen Xueqi recently?" Xian asked. In the past, Xueqi and Tuo used to travel together, but recently they were nowhere to be seen. Xueqi's house was also nearby. Xian looked around and saw no one. Oh, him. Tuo laughed. He's hatching eggs. Hatching eggs. Xian's yawn got stuck halfway. Hatching what eggs? Tuo told him what happened when Xian was away. The tribe naturally needed a relatively safe environment to settle down here. The totem warriors who stayed in the tribe were responsible for the comprehensive cleaning work. Lethal plants, large wild animals, ferocious beasts, and so on had to be cleaned up. Therefore, during this period, they didn't need to travel far, nor did they need to open up hunting routes. As long as they slowly cleaned up and expanded, they would be able to hunt a lot of prey. Although the carnivorous birds that used to live in this area had moved to another place, they were still cleaned up by the totem warriors and put into the pot one by one. When we were hunting those carnivorous birds, we also found some bird eggs. We brought them back and cooked them. Later, Xueqi kept some of them and didn't eat them. He planned to hatch them and raise them. In the past, Xueqi had tried to raise wild animals, but unfortunately they all ended up in the pot. Now that he was hatching eggs, he didn't know what they would look like. Xian was interested. Let's go and have a look. They've been hatching for so long. Are they out yet? Xian walked towards Xueqi's house. I don't think so. Tuo had been busy with his own affairs recently. Except for the tasks assigned by the tribe, he spent the rest of his time building the house. When Xian arrived, Xueqi was about to go out. Seeing Xian, Xueqi was happy. I was going to find you. Xian, when Cha-Cha hatched, what did they eat? Hearing the chirping of Cha-Cha birds in the house, Xian and Tuo knew what had happened. We used to feed them some meat. Now you can feed them some meat. Don't feed them any ferocious beasts. Tear the meat a little smaller. Yes, just like that. Xian watched Xueqi tear the meat into small strips and feed them to the carnivorous birds. It was rare to see him so patient. Why do you want to raise them? Xian asked. These carnivorous birds were ferocious and didn't have much meat. If they were raised as food, it would be better to trade for some large carnivorous birds from the Lu tribe. Did he want to raise them and let the shaman mark them? They run fast. Xueqi said excitedly while feeding them. I want to see if I can tame them so that we can ride them in the forest. When chasing the people of the Wanshe tribe, Xueqi found that these carnivorous birds ran very fast in the forest. Although they were not as fast as the forest raccoons of Mai's family, the forest raccoons was a ferocious beast after all, and these unknown carnivorous birds were a little lower in level. Even so, no one could deny that these carnivorous birds were very agile in the forest. If they could be tamed, they would be more useful than horses in the forest. What if the taming fails? Xian asked. Then we eat them. Xueqi said. For the people of the Yanjiao tribe, it was natural to raise them and cook them. After giving some advice to Xueqi, Xian left. He had to prepare for hunting. Old Ku had polished the hunting stone tools, so Xian could take them with him. Winter was coming, and people went out to hunt every day. Because the journey was not long, they went out in the morning. If they were fast, they could come back before sunset with the prey. They went out on the same day and came back on the same day. After Xian met up with Mai and Lang Jie, they went deep into the forest. Because of the fire seed, some ferocious beasts had left the tribe, but not all of them had left. Walking in that direction, Xian saw some marks left on the trees nearby. Every time the totem warriors cleaned up the area, they would leave a mark on the surrounding trees. Groups of hunters would take turns, and the area where the marks were left extended towards the ferocious beast mountain forest. There is still a long way to go before we reach the boundary drawn by the shaman. Mai looked at the last mark and said, in the plan made by the shaman and the chief, the Yanjiao tribe had a large territory. Actually, it could not be said that they had deliberately drawn it. Instead, they had used the drawings left behind by their ancestors. The Yanjiao tribe was not in the ferocious beast forest, but thousands of years had passed, and the land had changed. The Yanjiao tribe had disappeared for nearly 1,000 years, and the ferocious beast forest had expanded to what it was today. If the Yanjiao tribe wanted to use the original boundary and reoccupy the territory, they would have to clear out the beasts and ferocious beasts here bit by bit. If we succeed in planting, we will need a bigger place. And the livestock will take up a lot of space if they are kept in large numbers. Xian said. That's true. The others nodded. They were quite excited when they imagined that scene. "Okay, let's start now. Be careful," Mai said. From here on, no one would clean up anymore. Everyone had to be careful of the poisonous and threatening plants, as well as the hidden beasts and ferocious beasts. They had a lot of hunting experience. Once Mai said that, they became highly alert and stopped joking. Compared to other people's fear of the ferocious beast forest, the Yanjiao people did not feel that it was difficult. They even felt that it was familiar. The environment here was very similar to the original hunting ground. They adapted quickly to the ferocious beast forest and liked it very much, although it was indeed very dangerous. A new day of hunting began. The warriors waved the stone tools in their hands and killed the prey one by one. When the sun was about to set, they left marks on a tree nearby. When the next batch of warriors came tomorrow, they would continue to clean up, day after day, until the winter snow fell. Chapter 262. For some wanderers, the heavy snow in winter might be a bad weather. But for those who came from the other side of the river, it was much milder here than on the other side of the river. Snowflakes were flying in the air. Standing at a high place, one could see the silvery white mountains. Although it was snowing here, it was not piled up higher than a person. Heavy snow did not fall every day. Sometimes it was sunny. Of course, in the depths of the forest, there was worse weather. Xiao and the hunting warriors carried the prey and stepped on the snow, walking step by step towards the tribe. Along the way, they could see some cultivated fields. It was said that some of the seeds brought back could be sown in autumn and winter. Those plants were cold-resistant. The fields were not big. Now it was just an experimental stage. Around them, people who took care of the fields walked back and forth, busy with something. In addition to these fields, there was a newly built animal pen for raising livestock. The temporary place was too small. Now, after the expansion, another piece of land was opened up. When the wanderers first came, they all lived together with people they knew. It was similar to a collective dormitory. Because there was not enough space at that time, now nearly 2/3 of the land had been cleared. Compared with when they first came, it was much larger. Now some wanderers had moved out of the collective dormitory and built their own houses in the area demarcated by the tribe. Although the tribe accepted the wanderers, they would not give them food for free. If they needed food, they had to exchange it with labor. Not only the wanderers of other tribes, but also the wanderers of the Yanjiao tribe. The shaman and the chief did not allow them to reap without sowing. Even if the wanderers who survived were not strong, they always had the skills to support their lives. With these skills, they could exchange a lot of food from the tribe. The wanderers of other tribes lived near the border of the ferocious beasts' mountain forest. They could go out directly from there. But so far, no one had left. Although it was in the ferocious beasts' mountain forest, it was not much different from an ordinary forest after it was cleared. Moreover, in the direction near the ferocious beasts' mountain forest, there were warriors guarding every day. There was no need to worry about ferocious beasts running in. Even if there were some ferocious beasts, they would be caught and cooked before they could run far. The outer border was patrolled by warriors. The core area of the tribe was also guarded by warriors, where important people such as the shaman and the chief lived. Most importantly, there was also the fire pit. As for the orphans who were taken care of by the tribe, they couldn't catch fish here. There was no stock, but there was still a supply of food. Now the tribe valued them more. Other than teaching them knowledge, they were also trained together. Those who performed well were rewarded. Under the stimulation of the reward, all of them were full of enthusiasm. Everything was progressing in a good direction. Xiao returned home with the prey. When he was about to deal with it, Old Ku hurried over and said, "I'll deal with the prey. You go to the shaman's place. The shaman sent someone to look for you and asked you to go there when you come back." What did the shaman want? Could it be about the sacrificial ceremony after the end of winter? If they wanted to perform the sacrificial dance, they could have just gotten someone to pass on the message. There was no need to specifically call him over. Xiao was confused, but he didn't waste any time. He put down the prey and went to the shaman. The place where the shaman lived was very close to the fire pit. It was almost an imitation of the house built by the ancestors. It was drawn in the Wu roll left by the ancestors. When Xiao went there was only the shaman in the stone house. He was recording something. The shaman didn't stop writing. Xiao didn't disturb him. He found a stool and sat down. He also took the pottery jar and pottery cup on the table and poured a cup of water. The water was still warm. At the shaman's place, someone came in to change the boiled water every once in a while, just like on the other side of the river. After about a quarter of an hour, the shaman stopped writing. He rolled up the animal skin roll and put it aside. Then he looked up at Xueqi. "How's the winter hunting?" the shaman asked. "It's okay. Probably because we're not in the depths of the forest. Some of the ferocious beasts we encountered now are not very strong. Even if it snows, we can still go out to hunt. It's just that there are fewer prey. But we're almost at the border," Xueqi said. The border he mentioned was the border between the Yanjiao tribe and the ferocious beasts forest thousands of years ago. Now it was turned into a border by the shaman and the chief. The hunting warriors had to go all the way to the border to complete the hunting. At the border, there were many big stones left behind. They were engraved with words and totem patterns. The degree of damage was different. Some of them were even buried in the ground. "Yes," the shaman said lightly. He already knew what Xueqi said. Now he just asked casually. This was not the main reason why he called Xueqi here today. The shaman turned around and went to another room in the stone house. He took out a stone box with a respectful look on his face, as if he was holding a treasure in his hands. Xueqi sat up straight. Only the ancestors' things could make the shaman treat them like this. But why did the shaman take out the ancestors' things? After carefully placing the stone box on the low table, the shaman opened it and took out a bone ornament. There was a dim ball in the middle of the ornament. Xueqi was familiar with this. When he carried the ancestors out of the cave where the king's stoneworm stayed, one of them was wearing a bone ornament like this. Later, the shaman also told him that the ancestor with the bone ornament was one of the elders of the tribe. "Do you still remember this?" the shaman asked. "Yes," Xueqi said. He still remembered that this bone ornament was a treasure. It could withstand the influence of the king's stoneworm and prevent the cave from swallowing the ancestors. The shaman sighed and handed the bone ornament to Xueqi. "Take this bone ornament. When winter is over, wear it during the ceremony." Xueqi was surprised. "This is for me? What if I lose it?" The shaman's sad face twitched. He looked at Xueqi expressionlessly. "I'm just saying." Xueqi took the bone ornament and asked again. "Why do you want me to wear it? Didn't you say that only the elders can wear it?" "Yes." The shaman looked at Xueqi meaningfully. "If you can light it up, you will be an elder. How can something left by the ancestors light up so easily?" Xueqi said. He was not the fire seed. How could he light it up? As for the title of elder, it sounded like it was for the old men. "Not necessarily. We have to try," the shaman said. Since he had taken it out, he did not intend to change his mind. The reason why he took this step was to see if he could light up the bone ornament again. In fact, the shaman did not have much hope. After all, the fire seed was still incomplete. However, when she recalled Xueqi's performance during his awakening, the way he awakened with a complete fire seed, the speed of his improvement, and the power of inheritance, the shamaness decided to give it a try. After all, Xueqi was known to be blessed by the ancestors. Even if he could not light it up, it would protect Xueqi. Chapter 263. Xueqi held the bone ornament and recalled what had happened that year. He remembered that it was the ball in the middle of the bone ornament that worked. He asked, "Do you know what this ball is? Where did our ancestors get these treasures from?" In the king worm's cave, it was dark without any light. However, with his special vision, Xueqi saw the light emitted from this ball, which covered the people and things around. However, when he held it in a place with enough light, he could see everything clearly. In his ordinary vision, this ball was as dim as an ordinary object. This was a very special object. Treasure? It is indeed very precious. The shaman stared at the ball in the bone ornament with infinite reverence and said, "A long time ago, when the tribe was just established, after the first shaman passed away, the chief put him in the fire pit. However, he found that the first shaman did not disappear directly like the others, but left 6 pearls." "That's it?" Xueqi was surprised. The shaman nodded. Later, the 6 pearls were given to people who had made great contributions in the tribe. They were also called elders. Except for the shaman and the chief, they were the 6 people with the highest status in the tribe. They assisted the shaman and the chief. The 6 pearls were the second light in the tribe. Even in places far away from the fire pit, they could also light up the night. Unfortunately, after the fire seed of the tribe was incomplete, the 6 pearls became dim. Xueqi suddenly felt that the bone ornament in his hand was heavy. What if he lost it? The shaman would kill him. If it was an ordinary treasure, he would let it go. However, this was something left by the first shaman, and there was no 7th one in the world. Thinking of this, Xueqi was stunned. 6 pearls? Xueqi looked at the shaman confusedly and asked, "Are the 6 pearls left by the first shaman in your hand?" He just saw that there were only 3 bone ornaments in the box that the shaman took out. The shaman shook his head and said with obvious regret, "The other 3 pearls disappeared with the other half of the fire seed. So far, I can't feel where the other half of the fire seed is." If even the shaman couldn't sense it, then he really didn't know where it was. As expected, the fire seed was still incomplete. As for when it would be found, only the heavens knew. After talking about the sacrificial ceremony at the end of winter, the shaman let Xueqi leave. This time, if nothing unexpected happened, Xueqi would still be one of the dancers of the sacrificial dance. After Xueqi left, the shaman sat where he was and looked at the dim balls on the other 2 bone ornaments in the stone box. He pondered for a long time and finally sighed. Before he came here, he spent all day thinking about how to cross the river, how to return to the old land, and what to do when he arrived at the old land. But after coming back, as he understood more about the situation around him, the shaman felt a lot of pressure. Was the Yanjiao tribe strong? Yes, but only in the past. With their current strength, there was still a gap between them and the several big tribes in the central region. Even if they really fought with the Wanshi tribe next to them, the result might be quite tragic, which he didn't want to see. However, it would be better to wait for the wanderers to awaken during the sacrificial ceremony after winter. Only by becoming stronger could they have a firm foothold. Xueqi went back directly after leaving the shaman's place. At this time, it was already dark and there were fewer people walking outside. Fortunately, there was no night swallow here. Those annoying nocturnal insects also came out less because of the fire seed. After the fire seed was connected to the fire vein, it had a great influence on other creatures. Cha-Cha didn't like to stay near the fire pit. He just came here once a day to bring some prey to Old Ku, and then left in a hurry. After dinner, Xueqi planned to go to Keek's place to check on his carnivorous birds. But because of the bone ornament given by the shaman, he didn't go out, but sat in the room to study the bone ornament. The core of the bone ornament was the bead. Xueqi touched the dim surface of the bead. It was not as cold as other items in winter, but it was warm. Such a thing was left by the shaman after he was cremated. If the shaman hadn't told him about it, Xueqi wouldn't have thought about it. Xueqi knew that this thing was special, but he didn't find anything useful after studying it until he fell asleep. However, after falling asleep, Xueqi had a dream. In the dream, a humanoid figure formed by flames slowly became clear. At first, it was only at a relatively far place, but gradually, the person covered in flames walked straight towards him. The figure was getting closer and closer. His facial features could not be seen clearly, and his age and gender could not be determined. It was just a person wrapped in flames. The man opened his arms, just like the shaman when he summoned the fire seed by the fire pit. He seemed to be chanting something, but Xueqi couldn't hear it clearly. The shaman? Xueqi was like a bystander, watching the man's every move. When Xueqi was immersed in such a strange dream, the bone ornament he wore flashed in the dark night, and then dimmed again. As usual, when Xueqi woke up the next day, what he saw in the dream was still clear. Looking at the bone ornament hanging around his neck, Xueqi wondered if it was a dream from his ancestors? Or was he thinking too much? Shaking his head, Xueqi saw that the bead on the bone ornament was still as dim as yesterday. Xueqi stopped thinking about it. Today, he wouldn't go out to hunt, but he would participate in the patrol. Before the winter, the Wanshi tribe would occasionally come to the border to inquire about things stealthily. After the winter came, they seldom came. But they still needed to be vigilant, not to mention that there were many wanderers in the tribe whose loyalty was yet to be tested. Most of the wanderers who could persist until now were determined people who knew what kind of life they wanted. Even if they didn't have a good craft, as long as they were willing to learn and work hard, they would still be able to eat and not starve to death. Xian, how many people do you think will be awakened in this sacrificial ceremony? Lang Jie asked. I'm not sure. Maybe 1 or 2,000. Xueqi replied. Only 1 or 2,000? Not only Lang Jie, but also the other patrolmen around him were confused. Among the original members of the tribe, no matter whether they had the ability to hunt or not, there were more than 1,500 totem warriors. The rest were women and children who hadn't reached the age limit. Among the latter, most of them would be awakened as totem warriors in the future. After coming to the old haunt, there were 6,000 or 7,000 wanderers who came with them, including those who were found. At that time, they were surprised for a long time. If most of them could be awakened, how much help would it be? But in fact, this was not the case. Among the families of the wanderers who were accepted as members of the tribe, many were not Yanjiao people. For example, Yan Shua's wife, Old He's wife, and some women were Yanjiao people, but their husbands were wanderers from other tribes. There were many such cases, and they were all registered as members of the Yanjiao tribe. Therefore, strictly speaking, judging by blood, 30% to 50% of the 6,000 or 7,000 wanderers, and then looking at the people who could be awakened, it was estimated that only 1,000 to 2,000 people could be awakened. Listening to Xueqi's analysis, the patrolmen were a little listless. However, among the wanderers who came back, almost half were women. Xueqi said. Most of the wanderers who left halfway were men, and few women left. Perhaps, they knew that even if the tribe was facing a crisis, for them, it was the best choice. At the mention of this, Lang Jie and others who were listless suddenly cheered up. This was indeed a good thing. When they were on the other side of the river, there were few women, but the shaman was strict, so there were many bachelors in every generation. In addition, the birth rate was not high, and the environment was difficult, so after so many years, there were still so few people. Among the wanderers who came back now, not only were there many women, but the birth rate was also much higher. For example, Yan Shua's family had 2 children. Now they heard that their living conditions were better, their health was much better, and he had a wife. Seeing this, Lang Jie and others were jealous. As long as there was time, they believed that the tribe would develop quickly. Xueqi thought. Suddenly, he stopped and turned to look in one direction. That was where the wanderers of the tribe lived. What's wrong? Lang Jie and others saw this and asked. Xueqi said with vigilance and doubt, I always feel that someone is watching me. It's nothing. Everyone knows you. Maybe some girl is interested in you. Lang Jie said and stopped. Xueqi's face was serious, and the others stopped joking. They had experienced countless life and death hunts, so their intuition was quite accurate. If they really felt that something was wrong, then something was wrong. Not all of the wanderers who came back were trustworthy. Let's go there and have a look? Lang Jie asked. No. Xueqi stopped him. Just keep an eye on that area. If his intuition was correct, there were other people hiding among the wanderers who came back this time. In the direction Xueqi was looking at, there was an inconspicuous wooden house where the wanderers who had just returned from the tribe lived. How is it? I told you to be careful, but you didn't believe me. In the house, a man who looked simple and honest sat on a wooden stool with his legs crossed and said. But at this time, the simple and honest look on his face was gone, and there was only gloating. Next to the window of the wooden house, a beautiful and slender woman was hiding against the wall. Just now, she was just planning to test the kid, but she didn't expect that the other party had already looked over. Fortunately, she hid quickly and wasn't seen. The woman was about to say something when she heard footsteps coming from outside. They were not totem warriors, so they were relieved. They are looking for me. I have to go out to work. You should be careful. You'd better not go out these 2 days, or we will be found. When the man said this, the teasing look on his face quickly disappeared, and he became simple and honest, with a little bit of dullness. In the following days, every patrol team paid special attention to the wanderers in the tribe. But day after day, nothing unusual happened. Soon, the winter was over, and the most significant sacrificial ceremony in the past 1,000 years was about to begin. Chapter 264. The snow on the ground began to melt quickly, and the surroundings were no longer silvery white. In the Yanjiao tribe, there was a joyful atmosphere everywhere. Some people were happy because the seeds they planted had survived, some were happy because they had found a partner, and most of them were happy because of the upcoming sacrificial ceremony. Strength and belonging were what the wanderers had been looking forward to. For the wanderers, becoming a totem warrior used to be an unattainable thing, but now, It was no longer an extravagant hope. Early in the morning, the old warriors of the Yanjiao tribe went to draw totem patterns on the faces of the wanderers who were about to become real members of the tribe. This was a necessary step of the sacrificial ceremony. Even those who had not awakened their totem, and those wanderers from other tribes who were accepted as members of the tribe as relatives, had to draw on their faces. Only those who had gone through the sacrificial ceremony could be considered as real members of the Yanjiao tribe. Those who did not have the blood of the Yanjiao tribe, even if they could not awaken their totem power, would get some power from the fire seed. Even if they could not be compared with the real totem warriors, they would be stronger than before. It was better than nothing. It was the first time for the wanderers to experience such a thing, so they were very excited. They wanted to touch the pictures on their faces, but they did not dare to do so, for fear that they would break them. It seemed that the pictures on their faces were not pictures, but their lives. They had prepared for the whole winter, and they were not willing to wear the animal skin clothes in the coldest time. They wore them carefully, for fear that they would break something. This was their sacrificial animal skin clothes, and it was also a very important ritual. Xueqi was called in early in the morning. Together with other sacrificial dancers this year, the shaman and the chief told them one thing after another to ensure that they would not make any mistakes this time. When the shaman came out, he glanced at Xueqi several times. Although he did not show it on his face, he sighed regretfully in his heart. There was no change. The bead on the bone ornament still did not change. It was still as dim as when he took it out. Xueqi knew what the shaman was thinking when he saw him like this, but he was helpless. What could he do if the bead did not light up? Maybe the first shaman didn't think highly of him, so he didn't light it up. After all, according to the animal skin scroll about the elders, most of the elders were old. Even if they weren't as old as the chief, they were at least as old as Tar and the others. Compared to them, he was still too young. Many people had seen the bone ornaments, especially those who were in Xueqi's hunting group. When they carried their ancestors back to the tribe, they remembered the ornaments and weapons on their ancestors. Therefore, after seeing the bone ornament on Xueqi's body, many people were surprised. They didn't know the true meaning of the bone ornament, but even if they did, it didn't matter. For the old Yanjiao people who came with them, the shaman and the chief's decisions were right even if they were wrong. Besides, Xueqi had indeed done a lot for the tribe. Dusk fell. All the Yanjiao tribesmen, old friends, wanderers, and non-Yanjiao relatives and wanderers were taken to the place of sacrifice. The people who might be awakened this time were also taken to the fire pit. Because of the large number of people, there were several circles around the fire pit. Those who were closest to the fire pit were the youngest. Then they were arranged according to their age. Of course, those who had made obvious contributions to the tribe during their return, such as technical talents in planting, breeding, pottery, etc., were also given the opportunity to move forward. Many people knew that the closer they were to the fire pit, the more power they might get. But no one had any objection to this arrangement. Even if they did, they had to hold it in. Last time, it was to light the fire seed. Today it was the first real sacrifice in the old land. In the fire pit, a palm-sized flame suddenly rose. It was the first flame of the 3 flames of the fire pit. Soaring flame. Soaring flame, the totem appeared. With the appearance of the totem patterns on each totem warrior also appeared. They looked at the direction of the fire pit devoutly. The flame in the fire pit was higher than usual. It seemed to swallow everything around. The 2-horn totem in the fire pit was much bigger than in previous years. The surrounding area was covered with a thick layer of fire color. The shaman stood by the fire pit, raised his arms, and recited the incantation that others could not understand but made their blood boil. Along with the shaman's chanting, the sound of bone and stone music with strong tribal characteristics intertwined. The animal skin drums rose and fell, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. The sacrificial dancers wearing leather and horns also began to dance around the fire pit. The second flame, flying flame. The sparks were denser than in previous years. Moreover, unlike in previous years, some of the flames in the fire pit spread out of the fire pit. They extended from the air to the outside of the fire pit and did not touch the ground. 6 fire lines stretched out from the fire pit to the outside. Xueqi was dancing attentively. Suddenly, he felt something strange. The totem in his mind was surging violently, and the shell that wrapped the totem also lit up. This was different from before. In order to find out what was going on, he glanced at the bone ornament from the corner of his eyes as he performed the moon in the bottom of the sea pose. He was so shocked that he almost forgot what to do next. The bone ornament lit up. The bead that the first shaman turned into after his death lit up. At first, the bead seemed to reflect the light of the fire pit, but gradually, the dim surface began to brighten. The bead itself also emitted a flame-like light. Xueqi paid attention to the bead and had to make sure that the sacrificial dance did not make any mistakes, so he did not pay attention to other things. However, the people who looked at the fire pit were all stunned, especially those who had seen Xueqi's awakening. If they could speak at this moment, they would definitely shout to Xueqi, "You're on fire again." It was normal for the sacrificial dancers to surround the fire pit. However, one of the dancers was suddenly on fire, which was very conspicuous. However, seeing that nothing happened to him and he was dancing so happily, the shaman and the chief did not say anything, and the others pretended that they did not see anything. The shaman found that something was wrong with Xueqi. Unlike other people who saw the flames on Xueqi's body, the first thing he noticed was the bone ornament on Xueqi's body. The shaman's raised hand trembled. He could not wait to see if the bead really lit up, instead of reflecting the light of the fire pit. However, he was still in the sacrificial ceremony, so he could not give up halfway. It took him a lot of effort to control himself. The shaman continued to recite the incantation, but the wrinkles on his face trembled because he was too excited. It lit up, right? It really lit up. Even if we did not find the other half of the fire seed, our ancestors still did not abandon us. This was what the shaman thought. He wanted to continue to preside over the sacrificial ceremony calmly. However, with the end of the second flame, the third flame began. In the sea of fire that spread out from the fire pit, a figure gradually appeared on the edge of the fire pit, and the place where the figure appeared was exactly where Xueqi was standing. The huge figure gradually became clear, like a giant standing up in the sea of fire, overlooking the Yanjiao people who were kneeling on the ground. No one could see his face clearly. He was just a person wrapped in flames, exactly the same as the one in Xueqi's dream that night. Because of the sudden appearance of the flame giant, the shaman froze for a while. The sacrificial dancers around the fire pit could not help but stop. They knew that they should continue to dance, but when they saw the flame giant, they could not help but stop. They stared at it blankly, and had an impulse to kneel down. Xueqi also raised his head and looked at the flame giant in front of him. Not only the people around the fire pit, but also the wanderers who could not awaken far away could clearly see the giant standing by the fire pit. What was that? Or who on earth was that? The shaman thought of a possible answer, but he was not sure. After all, there was no record of this in the records left by the ancestors. The only thing he could be sure of was that this situation was not a threat to the Yanjiao tribe. On the contrary, it was better for the tribe's protection. The third flame of the fire pit was spreading, and its range was almost to the boundary that was drawn. At that time, the third flame of the fire pit should have reached the boundary between the tribe and the ferocious beast's mountain forest. However, no one paid attention to whether the flame had reached the boundary, or how far it was from the boundary. All their attention was on the flame giant beside the fire pit. The giant, like the shaman, raised his arms. It was a very similar movement, but there was no sound. When the third flame was gradually withdrawn, the surrounding flames faded away. The flame giant who stood up disappeared little by little. Finally, it returned to the fire pit with the flame. Everything returned to normal again. Chapter 265. According to the previous sacrificial procedures, the sacrificial ceremony would be over when the third flame ended. However, tonight was different. Even the newly awakened warriors did not have the time to rejoice over the fact that they had become totem warriors. They were shocked by the flame giant that had just appeared. Although the giant had disappeared into the fire pit along with the retracted flame, the shock that came from the bottom of his heart lingered for a long time. Not only because of the giant flame giant's appearance, but also because of the feeling that the flame giant gave them. After seeing it, they threw away all thoughts and wanted to kneel down immediately. The shaman elder breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the chief Ao. Then they both looked at Xueqi. Whether it was the shaman or the chief, their eyes were full of joy. Everyone! The chief Ao's deep voice sounded on the ground, which brought the people who were still immersed in the feeling back to reality. I, Ao, the current chief of the Yanjiao tribe, accept Xian as the elder of the tribe according to the will of our ancestors. Ao said solemnly. After the chief, the shaman also said, I, the current shaman of the Yanjiao tribe, accept Xian as the elder of the tribe according to the will of our ancestors. The people who had just come back to reality were stunned when they heard the chief and the shaman's words. Elder? Did they mean Xian? They had also heard that there were elders in other tribes, but they were all old men who had made countless contributions in their respective tribes. They were also very strong, and most of them had competed for the position of chief. There were even some tribes that accepted the position of elder after the chief retired, but they had never heard of such a young elder. The old people of the Flaming Horns tribe only had an impression of the elders when they were cremated. They didn't have much concept of this word, but since the shamaness and the chief said it, it was indisputable. What's more, the shamaness and the chief said, in accordance with the will of the ancestors. That was the will of the ancestors. Who could refute? Who dared to refute it? If anyone dared to refute it, he would be beaten up. Xian handed the bone ornament to the shaman and held a formal conferring ceremony. After that, he told the whole tribe that from now on, Xian was the elder of the Yanjiao tribe, second only to the chief and the shaman. The shaman held the bone ornament that glowed with flames. His hands were trembling because he was too excited. He could feel a sense of intimacy coming from the bone ornament. It was the power of a junior shaman, the most powerful junior shaman in the history of the tribe. At the same time, the power in his body that had been consumed because of the ceremony was rapidly recovering. In the crowd, Old Ka's face was flushed because of his emotions. His sunken eyes were filled with tears. Who would have thought that the child who came out of the cave, who couldn't even fill his stomach, would become what he was today and obtain such a high status? In the whole tribe, the old people of the Yanjiao tribe had to obey the shaman and the chief unconditionally. Even Tar and Gigu, the two team leaders, couldn't make everyone obey them. But now, there seemed to be one more. According to the shaman and the chief, the elders had a higher status than the team leaders. When the shaman and the chief made important decisions, the elders could also participate and refute. After the conferring ceremony of the elders, the ceremony was over. The new totem warriors were gathered in one place, waiting for the shaman's instruction. The others went back together. From today on, they were no longer wanderers, but real Yanjiao tribesmen. This time, there were less than 2,000 awakened people, including the children who had reached the age and the wanderers who came back. The specific number was still being counted. This was similar to what Xian had expected. Xian asked Old Ku and Caesar to go back first. The chief wanted to talk to him about the bone ornaments. The people gathered around the fire pit gradually dispersed. The families of those who succeeded in awakening were very happy. They went back to celebrate with their friends. Except for the children, those who failed in awakening were much less likely to be awakened in the future. A thin woman looked very depressed. She just smiled and said nothing to the comfort of the people around her. There were many people like her, so she was not conspicuous in the crowd. When she walked out of the crowd step by step, her husband was waiting there anxiously. During the ceremony, there were wanderers from other tribes, and her husband was one of them. "How is it?" Seeing his wife coming over, the man strode forward. The woman shook her head. People passing by saw the simple and honest man awkwardly comforting his wife, and they understood. They comforted him and sighed and left. The frustrated couple in people's eyes walked out of the field, went back to their wooden house, and closed the door. The simple and honest look on the man's face disappeared. His face became dignified and helpless. He took out some herbs and mashed them, put them in a clay pot, added water, lit a fire, and boiled the medicine. These herbs did not have a strong smell like other herbs. When they were boiled, they had a faint smell of grass. If one was not careful and stood a little far away, one would not be able to smell it. The thin woman, after the door and window were closed, quickly became pale. She could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood, as if she had exhausted all her strength. If she had not been sitting on the stool with the help of the wooden table, she would have fallen down directly. "I miscalculated." The man looked at the clay pot and said. The woman gasped and sat on the stool beside the wooden table. She did not say anything, for she was afraid that she would spit out blood again. When the medicine was boiled, she drank it and rested for a while. Then she slowly said, "If the flame giant did not appear suddenly, I would not be like this." Originally, their plan was to observe the Yanjiao tribe during the ceremony to see if there were any precious treasures. Generally speaking, the treasures taken out during the ceremony were extremely precious. However, this time they miscalculated. They were acting as a young couple. The man was from another tribe, and the woman was from Yanjiao bloodline. During the ceremony, they stood in different places, because this time the wanderers with Yanjiao bloodline would be closer to the front, so that it would be easier for them to awaken. If the totem warriors from another tribe wanted to join the Yanjiao tribe, they had to go through the ceremony to be accepted by the fire seed. Otherwise, they would be rejected by the fire seed. No one would want to experience that kind of feeling. But if they were wanderers with no religion, the repulsion of the fire seed would be much smaller. They had not received such a ceremony, and at the same time, they were not wanderers without any religion. When the flames in the fire pit spread, she felt that her whole body was like thorns, and it was burning. However, she could bear such pain. They had experienced many similar situations, so their endurance was naturally different from ordinary people. However, they did not expect that a flame giant would suddenly appear. The repulsion of the fire seed was doubled at that time. Moreover, the flame giant gave her a very strong deterrent force. At that time, she almost spat out blood, but she forced it back. Fortunately, at that time, the people around her were paying attention to the situation in the fire pit. No one paid attention to her, or she would have been exposed. She remembered that the situation at that time was like a weak beast facing a giant beast. She had no power to resist. Thinking about it now, she still had a lingering fear. Thanks to her long-term experience and superb disguise, she avoided the people around her. Chapter 266. The man who was cleaning up the dregs sighed. I wanted to steal the bone ornament from him, but now it seems that I have to change my target. Although he was far away from the core area of the fire seed, he could still feel the repulsion and awe. Not many people knew the bone ornament. Except for those who carried the ancestor back, the others didn't see it carefully. After a few years, they couldn't remember it clearly. Xueqi usually hung the bone ornament around his neck and put it in the animal skin. He didn't take it out. He had seen Xueqi's bone ornament before. In the winter, Xueqi went to the rearing place to help Xueqi catch the escaped carnivorous birds. After a while, the bone ornament slipped out and he saw it. People in this line of work had excellent eyesight. Although the bead on the bone ornament was dim and looked worthless, he felt that it was very precious, much more valuable than the fire crystal. But that boy was too sharp, so he didn't find a chance to take it. But now, after the Yanjiao sacrifice, he had given it up. It was a Yanjiao ancestor symbol, so of course it was precious. But the awe made him vigilant. What should we do next? The woman, who had recovered a lot, asked. Wait for an opportunity. If there is something wrong, retreat first. The man said. In fact, he also wanted to go to the Yanjiao shaman's house. Unfortunately, the defense there was too strong, much stronger than that of the drumming tribe. And there was that young elder who was very observant. It was difficult to succeed in one go. After the sacrifice ceremony, the atmosphere in the Yanjiao tribe became livelier and more positive. Because of the power and the acceptance of the tribe, everyone was full of enthusiasm. Even the wanderers from other tribes who weren't qualified to participate in the sacrifice ceremony of the Yanjiao tribe couldn't help but envy them. Those who were smart were thinking about when to hook up with someone from the Yanjiao tribe. In that case, they could enter the tribe as relatives. There was liveliness and commotion. As winter passed, everything in the forest started to become restless. After clearing out their territory, the Yanjiao tribe reorganized their hunting teams. They took turns going out to hunt and opening up new hunting routes. At the same time, they strengthened their defenses around the area. The new totem warriors had already taken up their posts, and they were quite active. They could not wait to walk around the border all day with their weapons. As totem warriors, they were very excited to participate in such a matter. More fields were opened up in the tribe, and the animal pens for raising livestock were also expanded. Everything was going in a good direction, but the crisis wouldn't tell you when it would come. You had to be prepared all the time, especially for the Wanshe tribe. On this day, Xueqi was patrolling with the others. Even though he had become an elder, he couldn't idle around all day. Although the elders did have the right to not participate in the hunting patrols, Xueqi was still young. He wasn't an old man, so he couldn't bear it. At first, the people in the hunting team and the patrolling warriors were a little worried about Xueqi's attitude. They didn't dare to make fun of him. But gradually, they found that Xueqi didn't reprimand them because of this, so they became bolder and spoke more freely. However, they still listened to Xueqi when making decisions. Just like Xueqi and Tua, they usually joked with Ta, but when it came to serious matters, they always listened to Ta. Xiao Xian and the patrolling warriors were patrolling in the tribe. As they walked, they came to the place where the Yanjiao newcomers lived. After the sacrifice ceremony, these wanderers with the blood of the Yanjiao tribe really settled down and became tribesmen. Xiao Xian took a look and said with a smile, "You've changed a lot." In the winter, this place was full of wooden houses. But now, some families had changed their wooden houses into stone and wood structures. Maybe soon, blue bricks would appear here too. Yes, there are more totem warriors. The other patrolling warriors said. The wooden houses were changed into stone houses for two reasons. One was that stone houses were sturdier, and the other was that stone houses showed more status. It also told the people around that there were totem warriors in this family, especially the wanderers who had experienced a lot of hardships and awakened their totem power. Now they couldn't wait to show off to the world. Keep an eye on them, Xiao Xian said. This was the message from the chief and the shaman. They didn't exclude these newcomers, but there were indeed many among them who were conceited. The Yanjiao tribe had its own rules. If they broke the rules, even if they were totem warriors, the shaman and the chief wouldn't be soft-hearted. They had to be corrected before they went astray. As they were walking, they heard that something had happened in the animal pen. The patrolling warriors were close, so they planned to go and check it out. Xiao Xian was about to go with them, but he saw something out of the corner of his eye. He stopped and looked over. "Xian, aren't you going?" Lang Jie saw that Xiao Xian didn't follow, so he asked. "You go first. I have something to do. If the problem is serious, blow the whistle." "Okay," Lang Jie said. The other patrolling warriors rushed to the animal pen and soon disappeared. Xiao Xian lifted his foot and walked in another direction. There was a couple there. The woman was carrying a rattan basket in her hand. They were walking towards the place where the newcomers lived in Yanjiao. Because there were other people around, Xiao Xian didn't move. When Xiao Xian followed them, the two people in front of him walked faster and faster. They also changed their direction. They were no longer walking towards the wooden houses. The people around them gradually became fewer and fewer. "The two people in front, please wait," Xiao Xian said. The two people in front of him didn't seem to hear him and continued walking. Xiao Xian hadn't seen all the newcomers in Yanjiao. He hadn't seen these two people before. Just now, he only saw their side profile, but Xiao Xian could confirm it. He hadn't seen these two people before. Xiao Xian didn't say anything else. He leaped forward like an arrow and rushed towards the two people in front of him. The two people who were walking together seemed to have eyes on the back of their heads. When Xiao Xian moved, they immediately separated. The man turned to face Xiao Xian. His entire aura changed in an instant. It was as sharp and hard as a blade. He clenched his 5 fingers into a fist and punched towards Xiao Xian. There were no totem patterns, but he had the power and aura of a totem warrior. When Xiao Xian approached, his right hand suddenly changed. His 5 fingers changed from a fist to a claw. With a sudden sharp aura, he attacked Xiao Xian's shoulder from top to bottom. This claw was like a boulder falling down. It was powerful and heavy. Whether it was speed or power, it was much higher than an intermediate totem warrior. Even an intermediate totem warrior might not be able to stay intact under this claw. The weaker totem warrior's shoulder would be directly broken. A wanderer? Which tribe's wanderer would have such an aura and powerful strength? At the same time, the man in front of him gave Xiao Xian a very familiar feeling. Xiao Xian's fist, which was originally swinging, changed in the instant they exchanged blows. His palm flipped from the outside to the inside, and like the agile vines in the forest catching prey, he quickly grabbed his opponent's wrist and threw it. He didn't directly throw the man away. Xiao Xian held him tightly, as if he wanted to smash him directly to the ground. The moment the man landed, he stepped on the ground with one foot. If it was someone else, even if they could stand firm, their feet would have to withstand the force of the crash. If the force was transmitted to the ground, it would not only crack the ground, but it would also leave a pit or deep footprint. After all, Xiao Xian had used his totemic power, and he had mobilized it to the peak in the moment of the attack. It was not easy to bear such a force. However, the man whose wrist was grasped by Xiao Xian didn't step on the ground as Xiao Xian expected. Whoosh! It was like a gust of wind. The dust on the ground was blown away from his feet, and the air waves spread out. It was silent. Chapter 267. The person who should have been thrown to the ground seemed to have transformed from a hard rock into a soft sponge the moment he landed. Xueqi could even clearly see the person whose wrists were locked by him undergo an unimaginable change in that instant. The originally tall and strong man collapsed like a pile of soft mud, turning into a flat and round fatty. At this moment, the sound of bones cracking could be heard, accompanied by the sound of air currents. Xueqi used to think that these people had special physiques and special abilities. They could change their appearance and disguise themselves as other people, and could even blur the connection between their bloodline totems. That was why they were not discovered by the people in the tribe. However, he still underestimated the person in front of him. While Xueqi was fighting with that person, the slender woman who had retreated to the side stared at Xueqi in surprise. She knew that Xueqi was very sharp, which was why they immediately changed their plan when they found out that Xueqi was following them. They did not plan to fool him. Usually, they would avoid the patrol team, especially the ones with Xueqi. However, they did not expect to be so unlucky today. They only saw him from afar before he followed them. How did this kid find out? If everyone else was like him, how could they fool the others in the future? Xueqi was also paying attention to the slender woman's movements, in case she made a move. However, she did not seem to be in a hurry. After a moment of surprise, she calmed down and stood aside to watch the battle. Looking at the person in front of him, Xueqi was shocked. Before Xueqi could react, in the next moment, the other party's ferocious and murderous aura disappeared. Xueqi felt the wrist in his hand tighten. Before he could grab it again, the person quickly slipped away. The person who broke free from Xueqi's grip smiled. His face was distorted because of his broken bones. Under normal circumstances, there would be a hint of pride and arrogance. However, when he smiled in this state, it was strange and terrifying. Just as Zhang Xian was about to say something, the smile on Zhang Xian's face suddenly froze as he turned his gaze to the sky. He was annoyed in his heart. Oh no, I forgot that there was a bird in the sky. The communication between the members of the patrol team was not limited to just whistling. Sometimes, the two birds in the sky would also play a role. Right now, Cha-Cha wasn't in the tribe, but Gigu's snow was. It was precisely this snow that silently went to call for help. Someone's coming. Let's go. The slender woman next to him stomped her feet on the ground and shot out like an arrow. She didn't look as delicate as she usually did. Although his body looked weak, it was actually hiding a great amount of explosive power. The man who was fighting with Xueqi also quickly left the place, but the husband and wife went in different directions. The moment the two of them left, Gigu appeared with 10 or so people. They split into two groups and chased after them. Xueqi didn't chase after them. He knew that with the strength of the two people, it would be difficult for Gigu to catch up. He was now certain that the man who fought with him was the one he met at the drumming tribe last year. Perhaps, he had stolen something from the drumming tribe. What made Xueqi feel strange was that these two people didn't reveal any real killing intent, whether it was at the drumming tribe or when they were hiding in the Yanjiao tribe. Xueqi didn't use his sword just now. He had left some leeway. Not long after, Gigu and the others returned. From his expression, it was clear that they didn't catch up. How was it? Xueqi asked. They ran. I saw them run out of the forest. Gigu said. The white falcon in the sky also returned. It also didn't manage to track them. Those two, are they also robbers? Gigu asked. Should be. Xueqi answered. Gigu's expression became worse. He sent more people to strengthen the patrols in case the two came back again. They went to the place where the new Yanjiao people lived. Xueqi described the two people's faces and figures. Not long after, with the help of the people there, they found the place where the two impersonators lived. Here. Gigu kicked the door open without hesitation. Some people around heard the noise and looked over. They didn't know what was going on, but they recognized Gigu and Xueqi. One was the chief of the tribe, and the other was a young elder. They were both people of high status in the tribe, so they didn't dare to ask. Xueqi whispered something to Tuo and walked into the house. Tuo didn't follow him in immediately. Instead, he revealed to the people around that the couple living here had secretly left and stole something from the tribe before they left. He didn't tell them the real truth. If they knew that there were people from other tribes in disguise, it might cause panic. These new people who had just settled down could overthink things and even suspect each other. This was not what the shaman and chief wanted to see. So Xiao Xian asked Tuo to reveal only a little. Knowing that they were defectors, the others were filled with righteous indignation. Those who had more contact with the couple also said a lot of things about them. At the same time, they separated themselves from the two for fear of being misunderstood. They would never be defectors. In the house, Xiao Xian looked at the furnishings inside. It wasn't much different from the other residents. Everything looked normal. Gigu looked around and listened to the information provided by the people around. If he guessed right, these two people had been hiding in the tribe before winter. They hadn't been discovered for a whole winter, and they even went to the ceremony with them? If the two of them caused a ruckus during the ritual. Thinking of this, Gigu and the others couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. Then they became so angry that they smashed the wooden table next to them. Xiao Xian and Gue he searched around the house but didn't find anything useful. Xiao Xian and Gue. He then went to the chief together to report this matter. Thieves had entered the tribe and hid very well. This made the chief Ao very vigilant. Go and re-register the names of every family in the tribe. Ta and Gigu, you are in charge. Ao said in a deep voice. Yes. Last year, because many things were done in a hurry, there were many omissions and loopholes. Now that such a thing happened, Ao needed to clean up the internal people again. No, not only the people in the Yanjiao tribe, but also the wanderers living in the periphery had to be re-registered and checked one by one every once in a while. The two team leaders left with their people. Ao looked at Xiao Xian standing next to him and asked, Xian, how did you find them? Intuition, Xiao Xian said. He didn't know why, but after seeing the two people, he felt something was wrong. He followed them and felt more and more that something was wrong. When he was in the drumming tribe, he could find that person because he was in the state at that time. He could feel different totems around him. That person was exposed. After that, Xiao Xian rarely had that state. Therefore, when he saw the couple, Xiao Xian was just confused. Later, he was sure that they were not from the Yanjiao tribe. Ao didn't ask about Xiao Xian's answer in detail. He thought about the two people in disguise again. He didn't want to be like the drumming tribe, who didn't know that something was stolen. I will send more people to the shaman's place. You should be more careful. When Ao said this, he glanced at Xiao Xian's neck. What he meant was, you also have a precious treasure left by your ancestors. Be careful and don't lose it. After leaving Ao's place, Xiao Xian walked around with the patrolling people. When he passed by the residential area of the Yanjiao newcomers, he left the team and planned to go there again to see if he could find any clues. It was a wooden house similar to the surrounding area. In the house, there was a wooden table broken by Gigu. There was a lot of wood debris on the ground. Some things next to it had traces of being moved. Gigu had brought people here to search. The wooden house was about 20 square meters. The furnishings were simple and easy to see at a glance. The wood on the wooden wall had been knocked, and there were marks left by tools. The ground had been dug, but they probably didn't find anything. The person who came was so angry that he stepped on the wooden stool and broke it. They didn't find anything unusual. They were just like the others who hadn't awakened their totemic power. There was nothing special about them. No, there was something special. Xiao Xian sniffed carefully. Because he had been exposed to a lot of herbs with the shaman, he had a better ability to distinguish herbs. There was a faint smell of grass. It wasn't bitter medicine, so it wasn't easy to detect. Next to the stove made of simple stones, there were some light green debris. Xiao Xian dipped his finger in it and sniffed. Those two were injured? It should be a recent injury. Thinking of the sacrifice a few days ago, Xiao Xian wondered if it was caused by the repulsion of the fire seed during the sacrifice. But why were thieves so bold nowadays? They were willing to experience the repulsion of the fire seed just to steal something? How dedicated. If the two who escaped knew what Xiao Xian was thinking, they would definitely curse him. If it wasn't for you, they wouldn't have been injured to the point of vomiting blood. After looking around, other than the medicinal dregs, he didn't find anything suspicious. Xiao Xian was about to leave, but before he left, Xiao Xian thought for a while and turned back. Using his special ability, he scanned the house. Everything in the surroundings darkened. The wooden walls, stones, and other objects also lost their original color and became dull gray. Except for one place. Xiao Xian's gaze stopped at the foot of the wooden wall. There, it was different from the surrounding gray. There was a faint light. It wasn't bright, but compared to the surrounding gray, it was very obvious. Closing the door of the wooden house, Xian walked over and looked at the dim light at the foot of the wall. It seemed to be coming from underground. Unable to see what was buried underground, Xian took out a short knife and started digging. As the soil and stones were dug out, the light became stronger and stronger. Finally, Xian saw a glowing object. Exiting his special vision, Xian looked at the object in his hand. It was an animal skin bag. The object inside was about the length of a forearm. It was cylindrical. He opened the animal skin bag and took out the object inside. It was a wooden cylinder. He couldn't tell what species it was. It wasn't bamboo, but it wasn't the ordinary wood Xian had seen before. It was slightly harder. There was a wooden plug at one end of the wooden cylinder. It was tightly plugged. There was a golden mark near the mouth of the wooden plug. It was the color of gold powder. Was there such a shiny gold pigment? Or was it some kind of metal? Could it be that these two people had stolen the treasure from some tribe? Xian was curious and wanted to pull out the wooden plug. Although it was just a wooden plug, it couldn't be pulled out without a bit of strength. At least, an ordinary wanderer wouldn't be able to pull it out. In order to prevent the thing inside from falling out, Xian pulled out the wooden plug with force. The wooden cylinder was filled with golden powder. If it was placed in front of Yang Guang, it would definitely be dazzling. Gold. No, not gold. It wasn't even any metal. Xian weighed the wooden cylinder slightly and used the stone knife to pick up some. The gold powder wasn't as heavy as metal or stone. It was more like wood. Golden wood? It wasn't dyed, but naturally golden. What kind of tree was golden? Xian really didn't know. But what was the use of the gold powder? Was it worth it for the two to bury it so carefully? They probably buried it when they built the house. Generally speaking, if those two people wanted to sneak into the Flaming Horns tribe, they would hide the things they stole in a hidden place, and then sneak in. However, it could also be that the things they stole were too precious, so they didn't dare to casually leave them. They had to bring them with them. In the Yanjiao tribe, they were afraid of being found and suspected, so they hid it at the foot of the wall in the house. They hid it quite well. The golden color on the wooden plug was the gold powder in the wooden cylinder. This meant that the wooden plug had been pulled out, but it had been a while. Xian dipped some gold powder and waited for a while. He didn't feel any pain, so he became bolder. In his special vision, the wooden cylinder and the gold powder in it all had a little light. The gold powder's light was a little brighter than the wooden cylinder's, but it wasn't the brightest. The real light source was still inside. Looking around, Xian took a wooden plate. There were many flaws on the wooden plate. It wasn't perfect. It looked like it was made by someone who wasn't skilled enough. People who saw it wouldn't doubt the real strength of the two people. In terms of details, the two people did a good job. After wiping the wooden plate, Xian poured out the gold powder from the wooden cylinder. When the gold powder fell on the wooden plate, it made a fine sound like sand, but it wasn't as heavy as sand. When the gold powder was poured out, a square, dark green object was poured out along with the gold powder. Xian carefully pinched a corner of the object out of the gold powder. It looked like a part of some kind of leaf, but it was cut into a square. There were cut marks on both ends, but not on the other sides. The veins on the leaf could be clearly seen. Xian felt that the wooden cylinder was very old, but this leaf looked like it was newly plucked. It didn't look withered at all. Sniffing it carefully, he could even smell the light scent of plant leaves. This scent was shocking. Even though it wasn't strong, it made people feel refreshed. It was as if all the fatigue in the body had been dispelled. What made Xian even more curious was the drawing on the leaf. He couldn't tell what it was. The lines were twisted and messy, and it didn't look like a drawing. Words? It didn't look like one either. Xian carefully blew away the gold powder that covered the leaf. He wanted to see the drawing more clearly, but as he looked, he realized that the golden words formed by the gold powder on the dark green leaf were gradually fading. Xian didn't blow anymore. The surrounding doors and windows were tightly shut. Even if the wind blew in, it wouldn't disperse the gold powder so quickly. Moreover, the gold powder on the wooden plate was fine. Only the gold powder on the leaf was fading quickly. Xian wanted to bury the leaf back into the gold powder. He wondered if it would be better and stop the dispersal of the gold powder. However, before he could do anything, his vision turned black and he lost consciousness. Chapter 268. In fact, The couple who escaped from the Yanjiao tribe did not go far. They originally thought that if they could not hide in the Yanjiao tribe, they could hide in the peripheral wanderers area. However, not long after, the Yanjiao people began to check the list of wanderers one by one. Let's wait for the right time. There will always be people who leave. Then it will be our chance. Yes. The thin woman had become plump, and her face had changed. Even if they were found, no one would think that they were the traitors. Thinking of something, the woman suddenly asked, "What about that thing?" "What thing?" "The longevity leaf." The woman gritted her teeth. Hearing this, the man suddenly understood and then said indifferently, "It's okay. When the wind blows over, we will go back and dig it out." If it is dug out. The woman was worried. They had picked up the treasure when they were hiding something. It was in an underground cave, and there were a few skeletons beside it. They didn't know which tribe they belonged to, but judging from the hardness of the bones and the degree of preservation, these people must have been very powerful warriors in the past. The treasure was next to the skeletons. Whether it was the treasure itself or the people who had been dead for a long time, there was no sign of any tribe. After an unknown number of years, the wooden cylinder had already changed color. However, the leaf inside was still fresh. That was the longevity leaf. It was said that the leaf would not rot after 10,000 years. It could be kept fresh for 10,000 years. A long time ago, the shamans of the tribe used it to record the inheritance. However, there were very few longevity leaves that had been passed down. Now, almost no one had seen the longevity leaf, let alone looking for the rare plant that was thought to be extinct. They had only heard about it before, but had never seen it with their own eyes. However, when they saw the leaf, they were both shocked. After the shock, they were happy. If they could get this treasure, maybe their ranking in the robbers would rise a lot. It was a pity that they could not understand the strange lines on the leaf. Because he was too curious, he didn't feel at ease leaving it outside. So when he sneaked into the wanderers of the Flaming Horns tribe, he took it with him. Anyway, it would not be conspicuous if it was wrapped in a tattered animal skin. After entering the Yanjiao tribe, they had also locked themselves in the room and secretly studied it for a long time, but still failed to discover the hidden mystery. Perhaps, only the shaman of the tribe could explain it. Who would think of digging up things there? Even if they tore down the house, they might not be able to dig it out. Even if someone finds it, we can just steal it back. Besides, how can it be so easy to find it? Even if they find it, they might not be able to understand it. How can it be easy to use longevity leaves to record it? That's true. The woman was relieved. However, the two men did not know that the things they had buried in the house had already been dug out by Xian. On the other side, Xian was unaware of the outside world. Naturally, he did not know that after he lost consciousness, the dark green leaf in his hand that looked like it had just been plucked quickly withered and turned yellow after all the gold powder disappeared. Then, it weathered and fell to the ground like sand, mixing with the other dust on the ground and becoming indistinguishable. At this moment, although Xian knew nothing about the outside world, he could see the totem in his sea of consciousness and the strange pattern drawn on the leaf. Why would this picture appear here? Was this also a totem? No, it was not. Xian looked at the strange moving picture. It was like a living thing jumping up and down. A worm? A snake? Or something else? It had no eyes, no limbs, only a monotonous line that existed there, but it kept moving. What the hell was this? Xian did not know much about this world. His knowledge of history and other things was even more shallow. He had only heard about it from the mouths of others, and it was even more difficult to tell whether it was true or not. He did not know what the leaf he had been holding before he lost consciousness was, nor did he know what the gold powder was. He also did not understand what the flowing lines represented. While he was puzzled, Xian found that in addition to the strange line pattern, there was a pair of hands faintly appearing. With the appearance of the hands, the flat pattern became much more three-dimensional. This time, Xian could guess what it was. When he was learning traps from old Ku, he had also learned several new ways to tie knots. What he saw now was like a pair of hands, holding a rope and tying a knot. It was just tying a knot. Was there a need to be so mysterious? Xian still did not understand. But the more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. This was not a knot used to set a trap. It was more like a message, a very important and powerful message. After staring for a long time, Xian did not see the pair of hands tying a knot. They just kept moving around, and it was a little chaotic. While Xiao Xian was staring at the knot in his mind, in reality, in the Wu's stone house, Chief Ao, the Wu, the two team leaders, Tua, and some of the people from the previous advance group were gathered here. Their attention was focused on the same place. There, a person was lying on a piece of animal skin. Chief, what happened to Xian? Was he sneak attacked? Xueqi asked in a low voice. Ta glanced at him. He did not say anything, but his face was very pale. Not only Ta, but also in the house, no one was happy, especially Gigu. Gigu had taken people to check the name list of the newcomers' residential area in Yanjiao today. He had also searched the houses of the two suspicious people, but did not find anything unusual. However, just as he was about to leave, he heard from people nearby that Xiao Xian had been here, but did not see when he left. Gigu wondered if Xiao Xian had gone to the houses of the tube defectors again, so he planned to go and check it out. Unexpectedly, when he went in, he found Xiao Xian lying on the ground. He was so scared that his hair almost stood up. Xiao Xian had just been appointed as an elder. If something happened to him, the Wu and the chief would definitely go crazy. Fortunately, Xiao Xian was breathing normally. However, no matter how hard they tried, they could not wake him up. Gigu had to bring Xiao Xian to the Wu for help. However, even the Wu could not wake Xiao Xian up. Gigu told the Wu and Ao what he had seen after entering the wooden house, including the newly dug hole near the foot of the wall, the empty wooden cylinder on the ground, and the gold powder in the wooden plate. The two team leaders suspected that the two defectors had come back and wanted to dig up the buried things, but Xiao Xian had bumped into them and knocked Xiao Xian out. However, it did not make sense. There were no wounds on Xiao Xian's body. It did not look like he had fought with anyone. Besides, if the two defectors could knock Xiao Xian out so easily, why didn't they just kill him? Unable to come up with an explanation, the others could only remain silent. The Wu dipped the gold powder in the wooden plate that Gigu brought over and rubbed it with her fingers. Her eyes flashed. He moved. Look, Xian moved. Gigu, who had been staring at Xiao Xian, exclaimed. Everyone looked at Xiao Xian, who was lying on the animal skin. They saw Xiao Xian's fingers on both sides of his body moving. There was no pattern to it, but it seemed to be caused by a conscious reaction. But soon, the trembling fingers moved a little more, and his wrist moved from time to time. At the same time, Xiao Xian seemed to be enduring something very strenuous. His physical strength was quickly consumed, and his face was covered with sweat. He did not fight or do anything else. He was just lying there. How could his physical strength be consumed so quickly? Everyone was surprised. Did he have a nightmare? Xueqi whispered. This man was so scared that his forehead was covered with sweat. Was he hunting ferocious beasts in the forest in his dream? Looking at Xiao Xian's hand movements, the Wu felt that it was not like what Xueqi had said. It seemed to be somewhat familiar. Thinking of something, the Wu's pupils shrank. She raised her hand and waved at the others. She wanted to drive them away. The two team leaders drove the others out, and intended to go back into the room to check on Xiao Xian. However, they were blocked by Ao, who came to close the door. He did not want to let them in. Ta opened his mouth and wanted to say something. However, his father stared at him, and he became quiet. He turned around and went out with Gigu. After the others left, Ao closed the door and came over. Seeing that Xiao Xian did not wake up, he asked the Wu in confusion. What do you think? The Wu stared at Xiao Xian's hand movements and sighed helplessly. Look at his hand movements. They are not like fighting or anything else. They are like knots. Knots. Ao was even more confused. A long time ago, before the written language appeared, the ancestors of the tribe used knots to record things. Knots, teaching and reading were like an early language. It was a popular way of communication and inheritance at that time. It was also called conclusion by the later generations. When writing gradually appeared and became popular, it gradually replaced the position of knots to record things and became the mainstream medium of communication within the tribe and between tribes. In the end, it led to the withdrawal of knots to record things, and the conclusion was hard to find. Even in the Flaming Horns tribe 1,000 years ago, they were mainly written in words and patterns. All the records were written in pictures. It could be said that now, except for the Wu of the tribe and his successors, no one would learn knots. You taught Xian the conclusion? Ao was surprised. Since Xiao Xian was not the candidate for the next Wu, why did he teach him the conclusion? The Wu shook his head. I have never taught him. Could it be Guizhe? Absolutely impossible. Without my permission, Guizhe would not make a decision. And the Wu did not finish his words. He was just suspicious, because if Xiao Xian's hand movements were related to knots, it was too complicated. It was different from ordinary knots. If you did not teach him, where did he learn the conclusion? Ao was not suspicious of Xiao Xian's intentions. He was just confused. In his opinion, knots to record things had long been eliminated. It was useless to learn it. If he had the time, he might as well go hunting. Just as Ao and the Wu were talking, Xiao Xian suddenly opened his eyes. Just now, in the sea of consciousness, he saw the hands gradually disappear. He left that state and gradually regained his senses. He also felt more and more exhausted and sleepy. Chapter 269. When he opened his eyes, his consciousness was still a little blurry. It took him a while to focus. The shaman and the chief appeared above him. Xian, how are you? Ao asked. Xiao Xian struggled to sit up. He took a glass of water from the shaman and drank it. After a while he said, I'm fine. You don't look like you're all right. Ao thought. After drinking a few more glasses of water, Xiao Xian felt that his strength had recovered a little. He told the shaman about what he found in the wooden house. He didn't mention his special ability, just his intuition. Ao was relieved. It was good that he wasn't attacked. That's it. The shaman took the wooden plate and the wooden cylinder with the gold powder. Yes. And the leaf? Xiao Xian asked. The shaman and Ao looked at each other and shook their heads. I'll call Gigu and ask him. No, I'll go to the wooden house myself. Ao said. Gigu wouldn't lie. If there was a leaf with a pattern drawn with gold powder, he would have brought it. But there wasn't. I'll go and have a look. Xiao Xian got up. He was a little weak, but he could walk. I'll go with you, the shaman said. The three people with the highest status in the Yanjiao tribe went out at the same time. Tar and Gigu called some people to guard them nervously. They were afraid that an assassin would appear. Recently, the tribe was really unsafe. They had been guarding against ferocious beasts, but now they found that humans were more troublesome than ferocious beasts. When they came to the wooden house again, Xiao Xian pointed to the place where he had the leaf. There was no leaf around. Did anyone else come in? Ao asked. Gigu shook his head. I don't think so. Recently, the people living around were busy drawing a line with the two people. How could they come in? As for the people who followed him, he believed that no one would hide anything. The shaman walked around the house, then stopped at the place where Xiao Xian had fainted. He squatted down and stretched out his arm, brushing the ground. The air generated by his palm blew the dust on the ground, but there was some dust that wasn't blown away. The leaf is gone, the shaman said. Gone? When I took it out, the leaves looked like they had just been picked. They were green. Xiao Xian was very surprised. But the shaman said it was gone, so it was gone. When they returned to the stone house, the shaman asked Xiao Xian to stay alone. Do you know the movements of your fingers before you woke up? The shaman asked. I don't. Xiao Xian shook his head. At that time, even if someone beat him to a pulp, he wouldn't feel it, much less the movement of a finger. You're tying a rope. The shaman's gaze was meaningful. Knot? Yes. The shaman told Xiao Xian about the history of knots and knots. These were all mentioned in the precious records left by the ancestors. Although the shaman didn't know it very well, he could roughly guess it from those records. And the leaf you're holding is probably the longevity leaf. It's said that it will never rot even after being buried. The shaman said. Is there really a longevity leaf? Xiao Xian was doubtful. It's not a rumor. The shaman dipped his finger into the remaining gold powder on the wooden plate and said to Xiao Xian. These are also powder made by the longevity tree where the longevity leaf is. Xiao Xian didn't say anything. The shaman didn't care whether he believed it or not. He continued, it said that a long time ago, leaves and shells were also tools used by the ancestors to pass down their legacies. Precious plants such as the longevity leaf were the messengers to record important legacies. Xiao Xian, do you know that in the past, the shaman's legacies only had language and no words? Even if words and pictures are popular now, there are still many legacies that don't use words and pictures. For example, I'll pass on some of the abilities to Guizhe in the future. Such legacies, even if recorded with words and pictures, will be destroyed. They only exist once. When the receiver absorbs them, there will be no words for others to read in the world. Naturally, there won't be a second person who can obtain such legacies. You mean that the longevity leaf is the legacy of a certain shaman? Xiao Xian asked. Yes. Between different tribes, because of totems and fire seeds, legacies should be isolated and rejected. But why wasn't I rejected? Xiao Xian asked. He took a look at the leaf and fell down. And the one who completed his messenger's mission, the leaf that people said would never rot even after being buried, had already dispersed. The shaman couldn't answer. He didn't know many things and couldn't give an answer. So, I inherited the legacy of that leaf? I don't know what it was. I only saw a pair of hands holding a rope and tying knots. But they kept going around and never completed a knot. Xiao Xian described the scene in his sea of consciousness, hoping to get some hints from the shaman. The shaman stroked his beard. He had already pulled out 2 strands, but he still couldn't figure out what it was. Tomorrow, go to Gui Zai's place and ask her to teach you the knots. The shaman said, before the appearance of words, knots were used to record things. After the appearance of words, stone bones and wood skin, the method of inheritance has always been changing. The ancient knots, in my opinion, are very mysterious. In ancient times, divination, contracts, memorials, and other things were all done using the knot method. How can a few knots represent so many things? Xiao Xian asked. But as soon as he said this, he wanted to slap himself. Stupid. Of course, things related to the shaman profession couldn't be explained by common sense. Even if they drew an egg, you couldn't think that it was really an egg, let alone a few knots. Originally, he thought that what he saw now was already ancient. He didn't expect that there was something even more ancient. However, Xiao Xian was really interested in knots. He wanted to understand what kind of message the leaf was trying to convey. The letters were all made of longevity leaves. How precious were the things that were sent on them. The next day, Xiao Xian went to Gui Zai's medicine house. The shaman had already told Gui Zai about it. When she saw Xiao Xian, Gui Zai put down what she was doing and pointed to some animal skin rolls on the wooden table next to her. That's what the shaman gave you. Xiao Xian opened the animal skin roll and looked at it. There were some pictures of ropes and knots on it, and there were some annotations in the current text next to them. The animal skin roll was still new. It was only a few years ago when it was made. It should have been copied from the ancient books of the ancestors when Gui Zai was learning the epilogue. Gui Zai brought some straw ropes over. I made these last winter. You can try it with these. It's more convenient. Thanks. When you make more straw ropes, let me know. I'll help. Xiao Xian took out a straw rope and looked at it. These straw ropes were smooth and didn't have so many burrs. Each one was about the same length, about the size of a baby's little finger. The toughness was also very suitable. Gui Zai sat down and also took out a straw rope. Then, according to each picture on the animal skin roll, he told Xiao Xian how to make a knot and what kind of knot meant. Sometimes, knots that looked very similar had very different meanings. This was probably the knotting method used to transmit hidden messages. Gui Zai taught Xiao Xian some very simple knots, which were the same as the ones drawn on the animal skin roll. When he finished learning all the knots on the animal skin roll, Xiao Xian could even type out a sentence with the rope. Because it wasn't very difficult, and Xiao Xian had a good memory, after learning some skills, he let Gui Zai do her work. There were still a lot of herbs in the medicine house that needed to be dealt with. He just had to look at it slowly and try it step by step. Gui Zai saw that Xiao Xian's work was going well, so he went back to continue pounding the herbs. The alligator snapping turtle lying at the door moved its heavy body to another place. It closed its eyes and continued to bask in the sun. Time passed little by little, and the animal skin roll on the left side of Xiao Xian's hand was getting fewer and fewer. When he finally tried everything recorded in it, Xiao Xian could roughly understand some simple conclusions. As for more complicated knots, the shaman didn't give him any. Perhaps there were not many records about knots passed down in the tribe, so what the shaman could tell him was limited. There were still a lot of straw ropes brought by Gui Zai. Xiao Xian thought for a while and observed the line drawing in his mind. Soon, he entered that state again and looked at the knots that appeared on his hands. Last time, he didn't understand anything. This time, Xiao Xian at least had some foundation. However, gradually, Xiao Xian realized that this was different from the conclusions he had just learned. Perhaps, it wanted to express another meaning. According to the shaman, knots were used in many aspects in ancient times. If one method didn't work, there were other methods. There were knots for divination, knots for contracts, and so on. Since it didn't look like an ordinary record, could it be a divination or something else? Xiao Xian continued to observe the movements of the hands. When he got out of that state, he weakly moved his neck and felt that something was wrong with his hands. He looked down and found that his fingers were tied by the straw ropes. He didn't know how the ropes were tied, but all 10 of his fingers were tied by the straw ropes. Xiao Xian wanted to untie them, but he didn't know where to start. He could only slowly remove the straw ropes from his fingers. When all the straw ropes in his hands were removed, the straw ropes had been twisted into a ball and couldn't be untied. Xiao Xian tied the straw ropes into a big knot and threw it to the alligator snapping turtle. The alligator snapping turtle, who was basking in the sun, slowly opened its eyes and saw the straw rope next to it. It opened its mouth and bit it, slowly chewing. Xiao Xian paused and recalled the movements of the hands he had just seen. He took another straw rope and continued. Failure. Failure again. Failure again. The straw ropes were twisted into messy straw balls that couldn't be untied and thrown to the alligator snapping turtle. No matter how fast Xiao Xian tied the rope, the turtle still maintained its original slow speed of chewing the straw ropes. Therefore, as Xiao Xian's speed became faster and faster, the messy straw balls next to the alligator snapping turtle also became more and more. Gue Zhe, who was grinding medicine, glanced at Xiao Xian from time to time and thought, "Isn't Xiao Xian very smart? How can he tie all his fingers with a knot?" Xiao Xian only stopped when there were only about 10 straw ropes left. Wiping the sweat on his face, Xiao Xian walked out of the medicine house, exhausted. He would continue tomorrow. He didn't believe that the message sent by the bansui leaf could only produce a messy straw ball. Chapter 270. After that, Xiao Xian didn't use the straw ropes provided by Gue Zhe anymore. It was too wasteful. He used ordinary straw ropes to practice knotting. Although they were rough and burly, he didn't feel bad if they were broken. If he couldn't untie them, he could just use them as firewood. 4 or 5 days in a row, other than patrolling and hunting, Xiao Xian spent the rest of his time trying to knot ropes. Oldka didn't understand why Xiao Xian was so obsessed with playing with straw ropes, but since Xiao Xian insisted, he didn't say anything. No matter how big or small the straw balls were, they were all used as firewood. After failing again, Xiao Xian was a little discouraged. He removed the straw balls that were tied to his fingers and threw them aside. He picked up a gourd filled with water and gulped down a few mouthfuls. It was just knotting a rope, but he was tired and sweaty. However, it was much better than a few days ago. He could go out and run for a while after a whole day. If it was the first 2 days, he could walk, let alone run. Xiao Xian took some time to go to the shaman's stone house and told him about his troubles with knotting ropes. "It just feels wrong. Every time I play, my hands are tied," Xiao Xian said. The shaman was silent for a while and said, "If that's the case, you don't have to think about it all the time. It's better to be casual. You don't have to be obsessed with imitating the movements of your hands. You can have your own ideas." Xiao Xian thought about it and agreed. Anyway, it was in his mind. If he couldn't figure it out now, he could try it later. What was the saying? When necessary, you have to learn to be simple-minded. Someone once said that simple-minded people were actually very smart, because they could always do something that others couldn't. Understanding the inheritance wasn't something that could be done overnight. It couldn't be rushed, and it would affect his mentality. "I know." Xiao Xian thanked him seriously. Seeing Xiao Xian's reaction, the shaman nodded with satisfaction. Just as he was about to praise Xiao Xian, he heard Xiao Xian say, "In 2 days, I plan to take a trip to the forest. It may be a little far, so I won't be back for 3 to 5 days. Cha-Cha seems to have found a good stone over there. I want to take a look." The shaman's heart skipped a beat. Just you. Now, the hunting team did not go on a long journey. Instead, they were exploring the area bit by bit. What they were looking for now was stability. At the same time, they could train the new batch of awakened warriors this year. However, since Xiao Xian said that he would be away for 3 to 5 days, the shaman was a little worried. If it were anyone else, the shaman wouldn't have reacted this way. However, the person in front of him was Xiao Xian. It was rare for an elder to light up the bone ornaments and inherit the will of the ancestors. The shaman was a little hesitant, but still nodded. All right, but be careful. Don't be impatient and don't advance rashly. The shaman warned. I know. Don't worry, Xueqi promised. Hearing these words, the shaman was so worried that he wanted to pull off all his beard. 2 days later, Xueqi left the tribe on Cha-Cha's back with the polished stone tools and food. After flying away from the tribe for a day, Xueqi walked directly in the forest. Cha-Cha needed to guard against other birds that suddenly appeared in the sky, and Xueqi didn't want to be a hindrance in the air. Walking in the strange forest, this was not the border area where the tribe first entered the forest. They were already deep in the forest. The surrounding environment was dangerous. With years of hunting experience and a better premonition than others, Xueqi was very sensitive to the hostile gazes around him. Even if they didn't have any murderous intent and only focused on Xueqi would be alerted as soon as they came within a certain range in the forest. The forest here was very humid, as if there was fog. The mountains in the distance were also hazy, faintly discernible. In this place, even a small beast or a small mountain was very dangerous. Further ahead, they walked into another forest. Tall and dense branches blocked the light from above. The place where Xueqi walked was very gloomy. Not far away, there was a hostile roar. He didn't know what kind of beast it was, but it was hiding behind the thick grass in the forest. It stared at Xueqi with its wild eyes, emitting a dark and ominous light. If it was the hunting ground on the other side of the river, the beasts would run away when they saw the hunters, because they knew that these people were not easy to deal with. They would be looking for death if they went up. However, in this strange forest, the beasts in the forest didn't know about human beings. They were alert to anything strange, but they also saw it as prey. Not only would they not run away, but they would also try to attack. A figure jumped out from behind the grass, accompanied by the low roar of the beast, announcing the start of the fight. The low roar of the beast became sharp and frightened. The sound stopped abruptly, the sound of the blade cutting the flesh, the splashing of the liquid, and the spreading smell of blood. When Xueqi withdrew the murderous look in his eyes and came out with the blood-stained blade, there were only the blood-stained beast corpses left in the forest. As soon as Xueqi left, less than 10 steps, some smaller beasts rushed out. They were not aiming at Xueqi, but at the beast corpse that had been cut in half. They screamed and scrambled for food. If they couldn't get it, they would bite each other. They didn't even look at Xueqi. However, not long after, as the pungent smell of blood spread, other beasts would come and drive away these smaller beasts and snatch the beast corpse. After flying and walking for a day, Xueqi looked at the sky. The sun was already hidden under the mountains, so he decided to find a place to rest. Cha-Cha fought with a ferocious beast with sharp claws living in a cave on the cliff. He drove the ferocious beast out of the cave, and then joined forces with Xueqi to make the ferocious beast their dinner. There were many beast bones piled up in the cave, with a rotten smell. There were also many insects of different sizes crawling around. Xueqi lit a torch to drive the insects away. As for the beast bones, Cha-Cha took them out of the cave. This could be a temporary resting place. If he came back in the future, he could come here to rest. Xueqi took out a piece of animal skin and drew a rough outline of the places along the way. Then he marked the location of the cave. This time, in addition to looking for the stone, he would also draw a simple map of the places along the way, so that it would be easier for the hunting team to explore and hunt. Xueqi applied some medicine to his wounds and Cha-Cha. Then he put out the fire and took the time to rest. When he woke up the next day, the sky was a little gloomy. He stood at the entrance of the cave and looked out. The forest below was moist. It looks like it's going to rain, Xueqi said. Cha-Cha didn't like rain, so he planned to stay in the cave and wait for the weather to clear up before going out. He had been here many times, so he knew that the weather here changed quickly. It was raining now, but it might clear up soon. Xueqi ate the beast meat he had roasted yesterday for breakfast. The meat had become cold and hard, but he didn't care. He ate while looking at the sky outside. I don't know when the rain will stop. Xueqi walked a little deeper into the cave, in case it would rain later. The wind here was very strong, and the rain might be blown in. Sitting in the cave, Xueqi saw the rope tied around his waist, and his hands itched. He hadn't touched a rope for 2 days. Since he had nothing to do, he took out the rope from the animal skin bag, cut a section with a knife, and played with it in his hands. The rope in the animal skin bag was a spare. As for the belt on his waist, of course, he couldn't take it off. Xiao Xian was about to tie the rope the way he used to, when he thought of the shaman's words, and he stopped. If he tied the rope the way he used to, the result would be the same. His hands would be tied, and he would end up with a messy bundle of grass. Xiao Xian sighed heavily, and closed his eyes. He threw away the memories of the past, and just twirled the rope around his hands aimlessly. Gradually, Xiao Xian lost interest in tying the rope. He wondered when the rain would start. Once it started raining in the forest, it would leave quickly. In this season, it wouldn't rain every day. However, if it didn't rain in this gloomy weather, wouldn't he have to keep waiting? As he thought about it, Xiao Xian seemed to see the pair of hands again, and the rope that was wrapped around the hands. The rope was moving quickly between the fingers. However, this time, the way the rope was tied was different. Xiao Xian didn't feel so chaotic, and it seemed to have a strong purpose. This time, Xiao Xian didn't divert his attention, but focused on the nodding movements of the hands. Xiao Xian's hands also unconsciously followed the movements, exactly the same as the nodding movements of the hands in his mind. After an unknown amount of time, Xiao Xian woke up from that state. When he opened his eyes and looked at his hands, he was shocked to find that there were several knots on the rope, and it wasn't tied up like a few days ago. Did he succeed? Or did he still fail? Xiao Xian guessed the meaning of the ropes and knots in his hands according to the basic conclusion he learned before. Just now, what was he thinking when he was tying the rope? Hunting? No, that wasn't it. Stone? No, even further back. Rain? Yes, rain. Thinking of this, Xiao Xian's expression became strange, but also a little excited. If the meaning of these conclusions was true, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed again, he had to verify it to know. Looking at the sky outside, Xiao Xian stood up and walked to the entrance of the cave. He took a deep breath, feeling the moist and cold water vapor in the air. He clenched his fist, stretched it out, and faced it. He silently counted the time. 5. He opened his fist and extended his little finger. 4. Extended his ring finger. 3. Extended his middle finger. 2. Extended his index finger. 1. Extended his thumb and opened his palm. Smack. There was a soft sound of liquid falling. His palm was slightly cold. Xiao Xian couldn't wait to look over, and then his smile froze. A pile of bird poop was lying quietly in the middle of his palm. Xiao Xian's face twitched. He planned to use something to wipe the bird poop off his palm. Just as he was about to retract his hand, another drop of liquid fell. It was followed by a second drop, a third drop, a fourth drop. Dense droplets of water fell from the sky, blown by the wind on the cliff wall, and some smashed into the cave. The forest at the foot of the mountain was instantly covered by a curtain of rain. The sound of dense raindrops hitting the leaves and the ground came from below. Chapter 271. It was raining. It was really raining. It was about the same time as Xiao Xian had predicted, only a few seconds apart. Was it a coincidence? Or was it really the same as what the knot had predicted? After washing the bird droppings off his hands with the rainwater, Xiao Xian walked back into the cave. He took out the straw rope from the animal skin bag and cut it again. Looking at the curtain of rain outside the cave, he wondered if he should try again. It was already raining, so what was the point of divination for the next one? Why don't I try when the rain will stop? Xiao Xian recalled the state he was in when he was tying the rope and his thoughts when he was tying the rope. Then he picked up the rope, closed his eyes, and threw away all distracting thoughts. He thought about when the rain would stop. Waiting for the hands to reappear in his mind, Xiao Xian observed for a while. He found that the nodding movements of the hands were different from the chaotic knots in the past. There was hope. Xiao Xian carefully observed the movements of the hands. In his own hands, the straw rope was knotted in the same way. When Xiao Xian left the state of consciousness, the feeling of exhaustion hit him again. His vision went dark for a moment, and his head hurt. It took a while for him to recover. It seemed that this method of knot divination was indeed very exhausting. Looking at the new conclusion in his hands, Xiao Xian interpreted it. He found that this time, it was not as detailed as before. The meaning was somewhat vague, but he could roughly guess. The rain would stop before noon. Even if there was no sun, Xiao Xian could roughly guess the time. He was used to days without clocks. Even if the sky was covered with dark clouds, He could guess the time by looking at the sky. This was a necessary skill for hunting in the mountains. It was only noon, so he would wait and see. Xueqi put the knot aside and ate a piece of cold and hard barbecue meat. He leaned against the cave wall to rest and recover his strength as soon as possible. When Xueqi felt that it was about time, the sound of the rain outside the cave had lessened, but it did not stop. Walking to the entrance of the cave, Xueqi looked outside. The thick clouds in the sky were dispersing, and Yangguang shone through the gaps between the clouds, illuminating the forest full of vitality. The sound of the rain gradually lessened until it completely stopped. In the sky, the dark clouds dispersed. Yangguang was just in time. Once was a coincidence, and twice was also a coincidence? Xueqi was even more convinced that the inheritance recorded on the longevity leaf was not divination. Xueqi rarely saw such a method ever since knots were gradually replaced. Even when he was on a long journey, he had never seen such a method. He didn't expect to obtain such a thing. The only thing he didn't know was which shaman from which tribe had left this behind. There wasn't even a trace of the tribe's totem. After the rain, the sky cleared. Cha-Cha flew out and caught a small ferocious beast. She then shared it with Xueqi. After eating, Cha-Cha rested beside him, while Xueqi stayed in the cave. He had almost recovered his strength. Looking at the remaining straw ropes in the animal skin bag, he thought for a while and cut off another section with his stone knife. Not in a hurry to leave, Xueqi planned to try the knots for the third time. He had finally succeeded, so he wanted to study it more. He wanted to predict what he might encounter next, but the third time was not so smooth. He still tied the knots to his fingers. Again. Failure. Again. Again. Failure again. Half of the straw ropes in the animal skin bag had been used up. Xueqi put down the knots in his hands and leaned against the wall to rest. Why did he fail? Was it too difficult? Cha-Cha was beside him, watching Xueqi make straw balls one after another. Then he leaned against the wall and banged his head against it. It didn't quite understand Xueqi's thoughts. It only felt that humans were really complicated animals. After his strength recovered, Xueqi thought that maybe the divination just now was too difficult. He couldn't do it, so he decided to do something easier. If he couldn't even do something easy, then he wouldn't try again today. He couldn't force it. Maybe it was a problem with his condition. He would try again when he was in a better condition. Picking up another section of straw rope, Xueqi thought about where he should go next. When the knots were finally done, Xueqi breathed a sigh of relief. Was the previous one still too difficult? He would have succeeded if he changed to something easier. He shouldn't bite off more than he could chew. It was better to take it step by step. The next place to go was naturally the place where Cha-Cha told him about the stone. This wasn't too difficult. However, when Xueqi deciphered the meaning of the knot and compared it with the direction given by Cha-Cha, he found that the two directions were not the same. The knot was successful, so it shouldn't be done randomly. Then, was the direction given by the divination more meaningful to Xueqi? In order to figure it out, Xueqi made some adjustments and tried again with another section of straw rope. The result was the same as before. Xueqi looked at the direction indicated by the knot and pondered. What was more important than the stone there? After thinking for a while, Xueqi made a decision. Cha-Cha, let's not look for the stone first. Let's go there. Xueqi pointed in a different direction. Cha-Cha had never been to the direction pointed by Xueqi, but it didn't matter. It was quite excited to go to an unfamiliar forest. Because the knot had consumed a lot of energy and time, Xueqi decided to set off tomorrow. At the same time, he took some time out of the cave to find some suitable vines to use as rope, in case he didn't have enough straw rope. He had used so much straw rope to tie the knot, so he had to prepare some more in case of an emergency. The next day, Xueqi, who had recovered, left the cave with Cha-Cha and headed in the direction indicated by the knot. There was a river flowing through the forest. The river water was a little green, and there were some animals moving around occasionally. Xueqi didn't walk by the river. It was dangerous there. He was at least 20 to 30 meters away from the river. There were some shiny things on the gravel beach by the river. Xueqi wanted to pick one up to take a look. However, when he bent down to pick it up, he suddenly heard a whistling sound. Xueqi had been on guard against his surroundings. When he heard the sound, he turned his body and dodged to the side. Bang! Where Xueqi was standing, a water arrow passed through and hit a big rock, splashing water everywhere. Water arrow? Xiao Xian's eyelids twitched. Where did this water arrow come from? Was it a fish by the river? Before Xiao Xian could think, another water arrow shot out from the river. Although it was made of water, it was strong and fast. Xiao Xian dodged the second water arrow. It hit a tree about 50 meters away from the riverbank, leaving a hole in the trunk. Following that, the third and fourth water arrows chased after Xiao Xian. However, because of these continuous arrows, Xiao Xian also saw the source of the water arrows. It was indeed from the river. There was a bulge floating on the surface of the river. It was part of some kind of creature in the water. Xiao Xian didn't want to waste any more time here. After dodging the water arrows, he left the riverbank. The deeper he went into the forest, the more he couldn't underestimate even a fish in the river. Big fish had their own threats, and small shrimps had their own abilities. If he wasn't careful, he would stay here forever. However, Xiao Xian didn't understand what was so special in the depths of the forest where danger lurked everywhere. Chapter 272. In order to reach the direction indicated by the knot, they had to cross the river. Xiao Xian walked along the river for some distance, but did not find a place to cross directly. So he asked Cha-Cha to give him a lift. While grabbing Cha-Cha's claws, Xiao Xian saw a hunting scene by the river. A gibbon-like animal with long and sharp claws was attracted by the shiny objects by the river bank. It wanted to dig them out and take a look, but a water arrow suddenly shot at it. However, the animal's reaction was fast. It stopped digging and quickly dodged. 2 consecutive arrows did not hit the target. Perhaps it was because it had lost Xiao Xian. The fish in the water was a little anxious. More of its head that was hidden under the water appeared, and some fan-shaped scales could be seen. Another 3 water arrows were shot out. The first 2 water arrows blocked the escape route of the prey on the shore. When the prey hurriedly turned around, the third water arrow hit the target. The prey on the shore was hit and staggered, but it only paused for a moment. The next water arrows arrived one after another. A sharp and mournful cry rang out in the forest as if it was going to pierce through one's eardrums. However, its cry only scared off a few timid birds. The other creatures in the forest did not move because of its cry, except for the fish in the water. The fish's body was about 6 or 7 meters long. It looked big and heavy. Suddenly, it jumped out of the water and landed on the riverbank. Its developed pectoral and pelvic fins were like 4 legs. After it landed on the shore, it bounced up again. It opened its big mouth with sharp teeth and bit down on the prey that was slowed down by the continuous water arrows. Xiao Xian could clearly hear the crisp sound of bones. The prey's eyes were filled with fear and disbelief. The strange fish that had bitten the prey contracted its pectoral and pelvic fins, biting the struggling prey tightly. Its slightly cylindrical body rolled from the riverbank into the river. The panicked screams disappeared in an instant, leaving only bubbles on the surface of the water. Everything by the riverbank returned to its previous tranquility. Only some bubbles and not too obvious blood floated up from the river. This was the fearsome beast mountain forest that all the tribes were afraid of. Under the seemingly peaceful surface, there were hidden dangers. Even from afar, it gave people a great sense of pressure. Xiao Xian withdrew his gaze. After crossing the river, he returned to the ground and continued to deal with the various kinds of dangers in the forest. He continued to advance in the direction indicated by the knot. While Xiao Xian was moving towards his target in the forest, the shaman was counting the days in the tribe. 6 days had passed. He didn't know when Xiao Xian would return. Whenever she thought of Xiao Xian, she would feel a headache and worry. Just as he was worrying, Ao quickly walked in from outside. "What happened?" the shaman asked. After hearing Ao's words, the shaman knew that it was not about Xiao Xian, but something else. He was slightly relieved, but what Ao said had to be treated seriously. The people of the Lu tribe told them that there would be a special expedition team coming. The team consisted of people from some big tribes in the central region. This new matter distracted the tribesmen, so the shaman didn't have time to count how long Xiao Xian had been gone. After 3 days of arduous travel, Xiao Xian finally arrived at the place indicated by the knot. Although there was no sign or stone to indicate that this was the place he was looking for, Xiao Xian felt that this was the place. Looking around, he was surrounded by mountains. It was a part of the mountain range. The peaks of the mountains reached into the clouds, and white snow could be seen. As he approached, Xiao Xian felt that there was something in the mountains that was attracting him. Vigilant of his surroundings, Xiao Xian walked step by step towards the place that attracted him. He didn't know where it was, nor what he was looking for. He just felt that he had to find it. The higher he went, the steeper the mountains became. The trees became sparse, and the attraction got closer and closer. Finally, Xiao Xian came to the entrance of a cave. Looking at the boulder in front of the cave, Xiao Xian put his knife back into the leather sheath at his waist. He took a deep breath, hugged the boulder, and moved it out. With a dull grinding sound, the boulder was moved out of the way little by little. This place was close to the top of the mountain. Although there was no snow, the temperature was much lower than at the foot of the mountain. However, it was as if someone had lit a fire in the cave. As the boulder was moved out of the way, Xiao Xian could feel the warm air blowing against his face. It was a warm air with a stale smell. The only difference was that the inside of the cave was pitch black, and there was no sign of fire. There was a strange force here that repelled the intruders. It was as if the intruders persisted, that strange force would tear apart everything that forcibly invaded like the rotating blades of a blender. However, this strange force gave Xiao Xian a familiar feeling. Cha-Cha hovered in the sky, unwilling to come down. It would rather die than come closer. Xiao Xian did not force it. After moving the boulder, Xiao Xian went to find some dry wood, lit a torch, and walked in step by step. He did not know how long this cave had existed. There were some things at the entrance that could no longer be seen clearly. With a touch, they would turn into mud or shatter. Inside. It was inside. With the torch in hand, Xiao Xian walked into the depths of the cave. Not long after, he saw several people. To be exact, there were 6 standing corpses that had been dead for an unknown period of time. When he did not see them clearly, Xiao Xian thought that they were people blocking his way. After taking a closer look, he realized that they were 6 brown dried corpses that looked like they were just skin and bones. Their hair was still there. Although the animal skins on their bodies were no longer shiny and were covered in a layer of dust, they were not as flexible as they used to be. They could be easily cut with a knife. The 6 of them completely blocked Xiao Xian's path forward. These 6 people no longer looked like they used to. There were no eyeballs in their sunken eye sockets, but they seemed to be seriously looking at something. Although they were expressionless, they gave off an inexplicable feeling of determination and fortitude. It was as if no one, no matter what, could move them. The closer he got, the more Xiao Xian could feel the power that seemed to want to tear everything apart. His chest churned, and a burning pain spread throughout his body. Xiao Xian had no choice but to use his totemic power to resist. However, the strange thing was that when Xiao Xian used his totemic power and totemic patterns appeared on his body, the strong resistance became gentle and no longer repelled. Instead, it made Xiao Xian feel closer. The strange power that was blocking him was gone. People from the Yanjiao tribe. If they were really from the Yanjiao tribe, then they must be the ancestors from 1,000 years ago, right? Since he was an ancestor, according to the tribe's tradition, they had to bow to their ancestors. Xiao Xian now had the blood of the Flaming Horns flowing in his body. As a member of the Flaming Horns tribe, he naturally had to bow. Xiao Xian put the torch aside and bowed to the 6 people in front of him with the ancestors' etiquette. Bang! The 6 corpses fell. Looking at the fallen corpses, Xiao Xian was stunned. He wondered if he had bowed to the ancestors, but then he thought about it and realized that was not right. Before, these 6 people had blocked the way forward, but now that they had fallen, there was still a passage left. It was not very wide, but it was just enough for Xiao Xian to walk through. Picking up the torch and being careful not to step on the ancestors, Xiao Xian continued to walk in. After walking for about 20 meters, Xiao Xian saw a person sitting cross-legged on the ground. Or rather, it was a mummy similar to the 6 people in front of him. However, this mummy was more complete. Other than being slightly shriveled, its face was still clear. Probably because it was too old, there were more wrinkles on its face. Looking at its clothes, it didn't look like a warrior, but rather like the old shaman. Shaman? Whether it was or not, he had to bow to the ancestors first. Xiao Xian bowed again seriously. Then, he felt the strange power from before dissipate like the wind. The temperature in the cave suddenly dropped, as if the torch had been extinguished and the heater was gone. Xiao Xian looked past the person sitting cross-legged on the ground. Behind this person were wooden and stone boxes that had accumulated a layer of dust. Chapter 273. Why did the ancestors of the tribe place so many boxes here? It wasn't just a day or two away from the tribe. If there weren't any dangers in the forest, it wouldn't be a long distance. However, there were many dangers in between. Xueqi knew that even if it was 1,000 years ago, there wouldn't be much difference. Xueqi walked over with a torch. The boxes were tied with some straw ropes, probably to prevent the lids from falling off during transportation. However, if one took a closer look, it was obvious that some of the boxes were tied up in a more complicated way. Even the straw ropes used to tie them were different. The straw ropes were tied into knots and painted with different colors. The knot in the middle was the symbol of a shaman. As for the other boxes, the straw ropes used were relatively ordinary. However, it couldn't be said that the things in these boxes weren't important. Since the ancestors moved them here, they must have important preservation value. Xueqi planned to take a look at the special boxes with knots. However, he found that the knots were very difficult to untie. The ropes were also very strong. It didn't seem like they had been there for a long time. Cut them off? Burn them off? Forget it. If the people in the tribe knew about this, they would definitely have opinions and think that he was disrespectful to the ancestors. Putting the boxes with complicated knots aside, Xueqi turned to look at the other boxes that were tied with more ordinary methods. He raised his hand to untie the knots, but Xueqi only touched them with his hand. The straw ropes that tied the boxes broke and shattered into powder. He pinched the other parts of the straw ropes and found that they were the same. Perhaps because too much time had passed, the straw ropes had lost their original tenacity and were no longer strong. The previous boxes had a higher density, so the ropes used were different. Now that the density was lower, Xueqi didn't feel pressured to look at the things in the boxes. Opening the boxes, Xueqi saw many animal skin rolls neatly placed inside. Xueqi picked up one and unfolded it. This map recorded some things that happened in the Yanjiao tribes in a certain year, such as harvests, disputes, and so on. Picking up another one, it recorded the various wars between the Flaming Horns tribe and other tribes. It also involved several tribes that Xueqi was familiar with, such as the Thousand Masks tribe, the Eight Limbs tribe, etc. Xueqi knew of several large tribes in the central region. Basically all of them were recorded. Did the Yanjiao tribe attract so much hatred in the past? But soon, Xueqi found that his guess was wrong. It wasn't that Yanjiao attracted hatred, but that everyone in that era was particularly easy to attract hatred. According to the records in these scrolls, the tribes were not as peaceful as they were now. Perhaps for the wanderers, the life outside was already very difficult, especially in the resting areas around the bazaar. The traveling teams of various tribes fought with each other every day, and then the fishes in the moat would be implicated. However, it was nothing compared to what was written on the animal skin scroll. Now it was at most a conflict between traveling teams, but what was recorded on the animal skin scroll was a large-scale conflict between tribes. A small fight every 3 days. A big fight every 10 days. It was as common as eating. Not pleasing to the eye? Fight. Fancy someone? Rob. See something good? Rob again. Everything depended on strength. If you could beat them, rob them directly. If you couldn't beat them, rob them secretly. If you couldn't rob them secretly, then you could only give up. If you didn't give up, then you would be beaten and killed. It could be said that in the past, the survival of small tribes was extremely difficult. According to the records, many small tribes were destroyed. The central region was even more chaotic. Because there were many big tribes, there were wars every 2 or 3 days. Today you raided my team. Tomorrow I will destroy your whole team. Even the Mang tribe and the Eight Limbs tribe, which Xueqi always thought were good neighbors and close partners, used to be like enemies. Not to mention a bamboo of the Mang tribe on the border of the Eight Limbs tribe. Even if there was a green onion that didn't belong to their tribe, the people of the Eight Limbs tribe would pull it out by the roots. And all the spiders and other things that entered the Mang tribe, as long as they were found and didn't come out again, they were either killed or eaten. Spiders were not delicious? No problem, as long as the people of the Eight Limbs tribe were unhappy, they would eat happily. Among them, there was a scroll written by an unknown shaman. It wasn't so solemn, but had a lot of bad taste. It also wrote a lot of scandals of other tribes, such as whose family was robbed, who was cuckolded, who was pushed down from the position of chief by his own brother. The words were slightly exaggerated, revealing gossip and excitement. Not all shamans were as serious as the old man now. The enmity of a family could easily become the enmity of a tribe. For that era war came too easily. and the physique and strength of the Yanjiao people made a lot of people gnash their teeth in anger, giving others the impression that they were all kinds of rude and unreasonable. But Xiao Xian could see the complacency and pride of the person who wrote these records from these words. No matter who wrote these records, most of them were like this. As one of the strongest tribes in the past, Yanjiao did have the right to be complacent and unreasonable. It was hard to imagine that the chaotic environment in the past had become much more stable now. Although it was still full of all kinds of barbaric violence and killing, compared with what was recorded in these animal skin scrolls, it was really a world of difference. Why did the tribes that didn't like each other in the past coexist peacefully now? When Xiao Xian was with the traveling team, he also inquired about it, but he didn't know much about it. Anyway, in the past 200 or 300 years, there were no big wars. Except for the Wanshi tribe, which always harassed the small tribes, the other big tribes in the central area didn't really fight with each other. Speaking of the Wanshi tribe, Xiao Xian only saw the name of the Wanshi tribe in 2 animal skin scrolls, and the recorded shaman predicted that the tribe would disappear in 500 years. But in fact, this tribe, which was more unreasonable and brutal than the Yanjiao tribe in the past, had survived until today, and had become one of the big tribes in the central area. Between the big tribes, they abandoned their former enmity and put down their hatred. Although they didn't coexist peacefully, at least they seemed to have a cooperative relationship. Xiao Xian could only think of one most likely reason for such a change. They had a common enemy, and this enemy made them afraid. 1 or 2 tribes alone were not enough. They had to band together. The Yanjiao tribe? No, even if the Yanjiao tribe used to be strong, it wasn't strong enough to make these tribes band together for such a long time. Another thing that Xiao Xian felt strange was that there was no record of slave owners. At that time, there were captives, and those who were defeated would be dragged back to work. But there was no record of slave owners, not even one. In addition to these, Xiao Xian went through several other boxes with weak straw ropes, and learned a lot of information. It wasn't all about the wars between the tribes, but included all aspects, such as records of farming and animal husbandry. Thousands of years ago, the Yanjiao tribe also mainly hunted. After all, it was close to the mountains, and most of the food was taken directly from the mountains. But there were also plantations, just like the murals that Xiao Xian saw. There were records of plantations, breeding, harvesting. These records were all in the books. Maybe now the shaman of the tribe also had some of these records, but Xiao Xian believed that the records here were much more detailed than those in the shaman's hands. Thinking about it, when the ancestors of the Yanjiao tribe left the old haunt, they were mainly fleeing for their lives. Naturally, they didn't bring many records of plantations and breeding with them. Maybe they didn't even bring them with them when they left, because when the ancestors left, they didn't expect to be gone for so long. The records in the shaman's hands were probably written by the people who left later on based on their own experiences. There were too many animal skin rolls in the box. It was inconvenient for Xiao Xian to read them with a torch inside, and he was worried that the torch would damage the animal skin rolls. So he moved the box to the entrance of the cave, and opened them one by one under the light of the cave. Xiao Xian didn't doubt the authenticity of these records. It was the shaman who recorded them. On some animal skin rolls that recorded important events, there were some seemingly meaningless words at the beginning, but these were actually the language of the shaman. Whether something needed to be recorded or not, if there was a conflict within the tribe, the right to decide was given to the fire seed and the totem. These seemingly meaningless words were actually a kind of solemn words, indicating that these were decided by everyone together or through sacrifice, and there was no falsehood. In addition to farming, fishing, hunting and animal husbandry, there were also handcrafts, astronomical phenomena, construction, medicine, war, political life, and so on. Although many of the records were vague and not detailed, and it could be seen that the tribe wasn't proficient in them at that time. For example, there were many limited records on astronomical phenomena and handcrafts, and they could only be regarded as immature. But Xiao Xian was still shocked to see so many records. What was the most important thing for the Yanjiao tribe? Fire crystals? Various kinds of crystal shellfish as property? Or other precious stones? No, none of them. In fact, all of these were at the bottom of the list. The more Xiao Xian knew, the more he understood what was important to the shaman of this tribe. In the tribe, the most important thing was to figure out their own members, origins, totems, and so on. Secondly, they had to set the rules of the tribe, important marriage and funerals, the establishment of a leader, meetings, and so on. The important things were production, war, sacrifice, and so on. These were undoubtedly the contents that the shaman needed to record and pass on to future generations. And these contents, in layman's terms, were what people called history. In the eyes of the shaman, the longer the history and the longer the tribe existed, the more it could prove the strength of the tribe. As for why the Yanjiao's history was kept here, perhaps it was because they couldn't take it away, and they were afraid that it would be put in danger in the old haunt, so they had people bring it here and hide it. After all, few other tribes dared to directly rush into the ferocious beast's mountain forest. The people in the cave had been dead for a long time, and the only thing left was the power that Xiao had felt before. For the invaders, it was a destructive force, but for this cave, it was like a guardian. It had not changed for thousands of years, quietly guarding here, guarding Yanjiao's history, and waiting for future generations to come back. However, to Xiao's regret, there was no detailed record of the fire seed among the books he had seen. Perhaps, the older things were sealed in those unopened boxes. Forget it, when he brought them back and let the shaman open them, he would ask the shaman. As long as it was not a secret, the shaman would let him see it. Xiao wondered if he should take these boxes and the 7 ancestors back now, and then say to the people in the tribe, "Look, I found the ancestors again." Chapter 274. Could these things in the box be eaten? No. But these were extremely precious spiritual food for the tribe. The shaman would rather starve to death than throw them away. Just like the people who were willing to die here. After careful consideration, Xiao decided to leave these things here for the time being. When he went back, he would call some people to bring back the ancestor's body and the important history of the tribe. There were too many things, too precious. Xiao alone and Cha could not guarantee that they could bring all these things back in good condition. If they encountered some troublesome ferocious beasts, not to mention bringing people in boxes back, they might even lose them. This risk could not be taken. The strange power that existed in the cave before had disappeared. Perhaps it would not appear again. Its guarding task had been completed. In order to prevent other creatures from destroying the ancestor's body and the precious history, after the power disappeared, Xiao set some traps at the entrance of the cave before leaving. He also went to the forest to find a lot of insect-repellent plants and sprinkled them in the cave. For these insect-repellent plants, Xiao even fought with a giant bear. His arm bone was almost broken. That giant bear was much bigger than the 2 he saw in the old haunt. Sure enough, the deeper they went into the forest, the stronger the ferocious beasts. After dealing with the things in the cave, Xiao left and went in the direction that Cha told him. The original goal of this trip was to find the stone that Cha found. He did not expect to have an unexpected harvest. It was not a waste of a long trip. More than half of the stone found by Cha was embedded in the mountain wall. Its color was a little different from the surrounding stone, and its hardness was also very different. There were scratches and marks caused by various animals or other natural phenomena on the surrounding stone walls, but there were very few on this stone. Good, very good. Xiao spent some time to dig out the stone. The hardness of the stone was good. It was at least a high-quality stone. It was big enough. Standing on the ground, it was estimated to be nearly 2 meters high and 1 meter wide. It was oblong. Xiao tested it. The deeper he went, the harder the stone became. Although it wasn't easy to find high-quality stones, they weren't rare either. However, Xiao was interested in better stones. Perhaps the core of this stone could reach the highest grade. He was out of stock, so he had to prepare more good stones to bring back and grind them into tools. Xiao was heavier than a normal rock, but with the Yanjiao people's superior strength, he could carry the rock and even jog for a while. However, his speed was greatly reduced in the forest. Sometimes, Xiao would have to throw the stone down first and find an opportunity to carry it away. Carrying the stone back was indeed a difficult experience, but it was worth it to be able to find such a stone. Because carrying one more stone consumed a lot of energy, and he had to save enough energy to deal with all kinds of creatures that might attack him, Xiao didn't have time to study knot divination this time. He wasn't used to carrying a heavy stone for the first few days, but gradually he got used to it. Sometimes he could even use the stone as a shield to block the attacks of those ferocious beasts. Now the weight he could carry was getting heavier and heavier. In this way he walked and stopped. When Xiao returned to the tribe, it had been 29 days since he left the tribe. Xiao didn't expect to be away for so long. He said that this trip wouldn't take 3 or 5 days, but he didn't expect it to take nearly 30 days. Zhao. Cha flew down from the air and called a few times to Xiao. There are outsiders in the tribe? Xiao Xian was puzzled. Could it be the Wanshi tribe? But now it didn't look like a war. Xiao Xian made a gesture to let Cha-Cha continue to pay attention to the situation in the air. After a short rest, he carried the stone with one arm and the dead prey with the other hand, and walked back to the tribe. The prey was a python, nearly 20 meters long. Xiao Xian encountered it when he woke up in the morning to look for food. He was almost attacked by it, and it took him some effort and time to deal with it. Thinking that he should be able to return to the tribe before dark, he didn't throw the python away, but dragged it back by its tail. There were many snakes bigger than this one in the forest. Xiao Xian had seen several snakes over 30 or 40 meters long, but Xiao Xian always avoided them. He wouldn't provoke them before he was fully prepared. When he came to the border, he met the warriors guarding here. "Xian, you're back. You got a good harvest this time," a warrior said when he saw Xiao Xian carrying and dragging. "It's okay. How's the tribe? Did anyone come?" Xiao Xian asked. "Oh, you've been away for too long so you don't know." The warrior thought of something and lowered his voice, saying, "Some people came. I heard that they are from the big tribes in the central region. The people who went hunting recently didn't go out. No wonder I didn't meet them along the way. They didn't go out hunting." Xiao Xian understood and asked about the people from the central region. "I don't know why. You have to ask the shaman and the chief. But I don't like those people. They are so arrogant." The man curled his lips and said. After listening to them, Xiao Xian walked back to the tribe. Now the sun was about to set. He had to go back in time for dinner. After eating in the morning, he didn't stop except for 2 short breaks. The tribe looked a little different from when he left. The leaves of the trees became denser. There were some farmlands not far away. The seedlings in the fields had grown a lot taller. When he left, they just showed their tips. Because he was carrying the stone and dragging the prey, Xiao Xian didn't go directly to a crowded place. He took a little detour. At this time, many people who came out to work had already gone back, so there weren't many people in the places where Xiao Xian passed. As he walked, Xiao Xian heard someone talking in front of him. The voice was very strange. There was more than one. Alas, that's why I said, this Flaming Horns tribe in fact, is not as exaggerated as other people say. Chu Su and Su also said that they are very powerful. I don't think so. That's right. When I heard those rumors before, I thought that they were all monsters. I was disappointed when I saw them. A soft female voice said. There's nothing special about them except that they are a little stronger. So what if they are a little stronger? Do you think you can kill people by throwing stones at them? The man couldn't help but laugh. Others also thought that this was funny and laughed. The man continued. How do you think they can fight when they're carrying rocks? Like this, or like this? Well, I've seen this before, haha. However, he soon found that everyone's laughter had stopped, and the atmosphere was a little strange. He heard a sound approaching behind him, but he didn't care. So what if the people of the Yanjiao tribe heard him? At worst he would fight. He wasn't afraid. However, everyone's faces were stiff, as if they had seen something incredible. There was also a person who had a good relationship with him winking at him and motioning him to look behind him. The setting sun fell diagonally in front of him. He couldn't see who the person behind him was from the shadow. Just as he was thinking about whether to turn around and take a look, he heard a voice behind him. Hey, you're in the way. Xiao Xian looked at the person in front of the road with feathers of various colors on his head. He was standing there like a monkey holding a watermelon. He thought, where did this idiot come from? The person in front of him turned around and the first thing he saw was a big stone. The pressure was so great that he couldn't help but move to the side. Xiao Xian didn't say much. He carried the stone and dragged the snake home. He glanced at the people present and didn't find anyone he knew, so he didn't look at them anymore. If he wanted to fight, he could wait until he was full. In any case, these people wouldn't leave for a while. He was hungry now and was considering whether he should roast or boil the snake when he got home. Looking at the person who left as if nothing had happened, the young people who stood there were silent for a long time. Then one of them asked, who was that person just now? The others didn't answer. They didn't know either. At this moment, they only had one thought. Damn, that person just now looked about the same age as us, but he was so strong. It was as if he wasn't carrying a big stone, but a bucket, and he wasn't dragging a big python, but a dead fish. His footsteps were quite light. Chapter 275. When Xiao returned home with the snake's tail and the stone, Old Ku was cooking meat soup. While cooking, he complained to Caesar, who was lying outside the window. Seeing Xiao come back, Old Ku threw everything aside and went to help Xiao take the snake. This snake is quite big. Where did you hunt it? Old Ku looked at the snake in front of the house, went into the house, took out his tools, and planned to cut it. Not far from the tribe. I just killed it and dragged it back. This stone is the one Cha-Cha found. It's good, right? Xiao moved his shoulders. His shoulders hurt from carrying the stone for too long. Old Ku touched it with a small stone knife and nodded. It's really good. It's worth your time. Oh, you should go to the shaman's place. I'll take care of this snake. Okay, I also have something to tell him. Wait, I almost forgot. Don't go to the stone house near the fire pit. The shaman is not there. He and the chief are in the big house over there. They are talking with the people from the central tribes. They haven't come back yet. You can go there directly. Xiao looked towards the direction Old Ku was pointing at. There was a relatively magnificent stone house, located at the border of the core area. There were no other houses around it. Basically, there was only one house, which was very eye-catching. The shaman asked everyone to build it after he knew that people were coming. He and the chief have been talking with the outsiders these days. Old Ku explained. Okay, I'll go there and have a look. The ground was paved with stones. Even if it was raining, people would not step on the mud on the ground. This was not there before Xiao left. There were many warriors around the big stone house. Most of them were from the Yanjiao tribe, but there were also warriors from other tribes. These foreign warriors were not all from the same tribe. Even those with poor eyesight could tell that they came from at least 3 different tribes. The style of clothing was too obvious. The clothing of each tribe was related to the tribe's totem and customs. For example, the people of the Mang tribe liked to wear green. Some of them were light green, while others were dark green. The material of their clothing was similar to linen, and there were jade stones hanging from their bodies. Judging from the jade, these people were at least intermediate totem warriors. The clothes of the people of the 8 Limbs tribe had a silky texture, which was the specialty of their tribe. Some warriors even had spiders of different sizes crawling on their bodies. There was also a tribe with feathers on their heads. They were similar to the people that Xiao had encountered before. Their faces were also painted with various colors, making it impossible to see their original appearance. The Feather Tribe? When Xiao was observing these people, he found that they did not care about Xiao at first. However, there were 2 people that Xiao had seen before. Su and Chu both looked at Xiao. They had a deep impression of Xiao, especially when they saw Xiao beat 4 people by himself. Now they could not help trembling when they thought about it. As for the other Yanjiao tribe warriors who were guarding outside, they unconsciously smiled when they saw Xiao. Are you here for the shaman? A warrior asked. Yes. Why don't you go and ask if I can go in first? Xiao said. One of the warriors who often acted as the shaman's guard was familiar with Xiao. He did not think that the shaman would stop Xiao from entering the house. However, the situation inside was complicated, so it was better to ask. Not long after the man entered the house, he came out and motioned for Xiao to go in directly. Seeing Xiao walk in, a few people from the other tribes were unhappy. There were several important people inside. How could a small fry like Xiao be allowed to enter? Who is the guy who just went in? Why can he go in? Someone asked. He is Xiao. Chu said. The man who was about to say something turned to look at Chu and Su. He is that Xiao? Yanjiao Xiao had been known by some people before the Yanjiao tribe came back. However, when they looked for him later, they could not find him until the whole Yanjiao tribe appeared. Several Yanjiao warriors looked at the people opposite with ridicule and said, Why can he go in? Because he is the elder of our tribe. So far, he is the only elder. His position is second only to the shaman and the chief. Why can't he go in? The Yanjiao warriors had long been dissatisfied with those people from the other tribes who always had a sense of superiority. Why? Now these people were still dissatisfied with the elders of the tribe. As long as you dare to say, we dare to fight. Seeing that the situation was not good, An older warrior pulled the people in front of him. That's enough. We are not here to quarrel. Be careful of the team leaders. Xiao Xian did not know that there were sparks outside the stone house again, and a fight almost broke out. After he went in, he saw 4 people from the other tribes, 3 sitting and 1 standing behind. Among the 3 sitting people, Xiao Xian had seen one of them before. He was Huang Yi, a senior totem warrior of the Mang tribe with a 3-horned jade. Huang Yi looked at Xiao Xian carefully. When he saw Xiao Xian for the first time, he did not take Xiao Xian seriously. He only thought that Xiao Xian was an insignificant person in a small tribe until Chusu told him about the Yanjiao tribe. Xiao Xian did not care about the 4 people's eyes and went straight to them. When the shaman saw Xiao Xian, a smile appeared on his expressionless face. He waved his hand and signaled Gigu, who was standing behind him, to bring a chair over. Here, except for the shaman and the chief, who were sitting, Gigu and Ta were standing. However, after Xiao Xian came, he became the 3rd person from the Yanjiao tribe to sit. Seeing this, the eyelids of the 3 people sitting across the table twitched at the same time. On the side of the Flaming Horns tribe, those who could sit here naturally had a very high status in the tribe. Even the 2 team leaders couldn't sit here, but this young man dared to sit here without any change in his expression, and the others didn't show any signs of objection. Obviously, Xiao Xian's status was even higher than the 2 team leaders. How old was he? He was not even a senior totem warrior. Let me introduce you. This is Xiao Xian, the elder of the Yanjiao tribe. Xiao Xian said. As the only non-senior totem warrior in the room, this person was not afraid at all. Surrounded by the momentum of a senior totem warrior, he was very natural. Huang Yi was very confused about the word elder, but now was not the time to ask in detail. He might not get the answer even if he asked. Mang Lin, Huang Yi. Huang Yi said. Wei Ba Qiu Gu. The person next to Huang Yi said. That person looked about the same age as Huang Yi, but with a smiling face. He was not as serious as Huang Yi. Gu Ji of the Feather Tribe. The 3rd person said. Because there was too much paint on his face, his original face could not be seen. I just came back from the forest. I'm very sorry to disturb your discussion. Xiao Xian said. However, although he said so, he didn't look sorry at all. Huang Yi was about to say something, but the shaman said first with a faint smile, as the elder of the tribe, you are qualified to know what we are talking about. What are we talking about? Xiao Xian asked. The shaman briefly told them about their conversation just now. There were 2 things. First, they suggested that the Yanjiao tribe should not fight with the Wanshe tribe. All 3 of them had the same idea. Here, they also represented the 3 tribes. The second thing was that there would be a special traveling team in the central region every year. Most of them were young people from different tribes. This time there was one more Yanjiao tribe, so they came to have a look and ask about the candidates. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.